Welcome to the Real World Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Cameron. I am the host here at the Real World YouTube channel, and we just surpassed 100 subscribers. Thank you so much for all the support already. All of our social medias are in the description below, so be sure to follow us there as well. All right, episode 19 of the Real World Podcast. We're talking about The Rings of Power. This is a new series that has just dropped on Amazon Prime. It's tied into the Lord of the Rings films, so we wanted to discuss that. We're also going to be talking about our top 10 favorite fantasy films of all time. So be sure to join us in the discussion below. Leave us a comment with your top 10. Give us your review of Rings of Power. We want to know what you thought about it as well. And joining me again after a brief break is Bert. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, good to see you. It's been a little while. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us. So, yeah, be sure to join us for this conversation. It should be fun. All right, so before we jump into our main topics today, we wanted to talk a little bit about some movie news that dropped this week. There wasn't a ton. This is a movie I'm excited about. It was just announced, so I haven't even shot it yet, but it's called Ursa Minor. This is a sci-fi film. It's a sci-fi survival film. It takes place on a distant planet, and it stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Xochitl Gomez, who we just saw in Doctor Strange. She played America Chavez.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're playing a mother-daughter who are kind of stranded on this desolate planet somewhere, and they're just having to survive. That's basically all that they've really revealed about the plot. Just now been announced. They're probably not going to shoot it until beginning of next year, but it's one that had me curious because I'm a big sci-fi guy. I know you are too.
Me too. I've seen so many bad ones, though. I mean,
Right.
I'll try almost any sci, and the premise will sound good, and then
Sure.
you get about 20 minutes in, and you already know, oh, this is one of those.
Exactly.
But I mean, like time travel movies, sci-fi, like I'm a sucker
Yes.
for them. I'll try almost any of them, just to
Yeah.
find the good ones.
Same here. Same here. I'm excited for mainly for the talent involved. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, 10 Cloverfield Lane, Birds of Prey. She's done a few movies. She's had roles in that I really like. I like her as an actress. Kate was a recent one on Netflix that was really good. If you haven't checked that out, that's a good one to watch. Good action movie. So yeah, I'm curious about Ursa Minor. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. Some casting news dropped for upcoming DC movie, the Joker sequel, which is being made now. Brendan Gleeson has been cast. This is a big name actor, Irish actor who's done many films over his career, and I think he's just excellent in everything I've seen him in. So I'm curious to see. They haven't revealed what his role is. If he's playing a known DC character or just a new character created for the film, we're not sure. But I know you weren't as big on the Joker movie as I was.
I didn't like it really at all. It's just not the kind of story I like to see.
Sure.
And it wasn't that it wasn't well made or something.
Yeah.
I feel like, and maybe I'm just biased, but I feel like it was probably meant to be a standalone film, and because of it made a ton of money. And a lot of people, I think most people like it.
Yeah.
So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that a sequel's coming.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of an odd one to get a sequel. I kind of agree with that. It is very much a standalone story, that first one, but I think since it takes place in the DC world, there's so many ways you can go with it. And what they're doing with the sequel is really interesting. Have you heard what the genre is?
No, tell me.
This is going to be a musical.
Oh, maybe you did mention that.
So it's it's still got Joaquin Phoenix. It's still got Todd Phillips, same director, same writer, but they're adding Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, who is Joker's girlfriend, and the comics and everything. She's actually originated in the animated series, but so I'm really curious to see how this is going to work, what it's going to be like, how different the tone is going to be. Is it still going to be this R-rated kind of violent story, or are they making it more comedic? Maybe I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. So I'm just really curious about this more than anything. I like the first one. I think it's a really well-made movie. I think the performances are excellent. So I'm curious to see. This one is not going to be released though until 2024. So we've got some time before this one's released. But
if they don't lighten the mood and it's still a musical, what other film can that be compared to?
I don't know. There are very, I don't know if any really like R-rated.
And who's the audience for that? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe is Sweeney Todd a musical? Isn't that like an
Yeah, I'm
R-rated?
almost certain it is. Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
that's been on Broadway or whatnot. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. I haven't
yeah.
seen that film, but I
But
know.
yeah, I haven't either. So I don't know if that's yeah, I don't know what the tone is because I just haven't
Yeah.
seen the film. But
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about it. So we'll just, again,
yeah.
have to wait and see on that.
Huh.
Last bit of movie news here. Again, not much this week. There was a trailer that dropped, and I forgot to mention this to you so you could check it out. It's called Dead for a Dollar. It's by a director named Walter Hill, who I'm a big fan of. He's done movies like The Long Riders, Streets of Fire, The Driver, The Warriors.
Oh, I like the
Um,
driver. I think I saw
yeah,
that one.
yeah, he did 48 Hours, Crossroads, Wild Bill with Jeff Bridges. There's quite
Oh,
a few movies
sure.
he's done over his career. He's I think in his 70s, maybe 80s now.
Oh.
And
Mhm.
so he's coming back. He hasn't done a movie in a while. It's a Western. It stars Christoph Waltz.
Oh,
Um,
he's good.
it's
He's good
yeah,
in everything.
excellent actor. Willem Dafoe.
Oh, he's one of my favorites.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's got a great cast. Benjamin Bratt is going to be in it as
Oh
well.
yeah. Okay.
Young actress named Rachel Brosnahan, who I haven't seen
Hmm.
in anything yet. But the trailer, it looks good. It looks like a good story. It's basically about a bounty hunter going to rescue this woman. And then when he gets there, not everything is as it seems. It's
Mm.
maybe the guy that hired him is actually the bad guy. It looks interesting. The trailer, just to me, it maybe gave away a little too much. And it also kind of felt a little cheap. Like they probably didn't have a big budget on this, almost like
Mm.
a made for TV or straight to streaming movie would
Yeah,
seem.
yeah.
So it had a little bit of that vibe that I wasn't really into. But again, the story, the cast is there. So,
Especially if Christoph Waltz is the bad guy, then I mean, he's
right,
such a good bad guy.
right. But see, the thing is, Willem Dafoe is too. So I'm curious to
Oh, true. Yeah,
see
that's that. They're both
which will
good.
be
Yeah,
which, in the
right.
story.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
Again, we'll have to look forward to it. It's actually coming out at the end of the month. And they just now dropped the trailer for it. But I think
Hmm.
September 30th, I think, was the release date on that one. So,
Yeah. By the way, I wanted to ask you this. You
yeah,
mentioned straight to streaming.
right.
I was thinking about that when I was writing a review recently for I don't remember which film it was, but
Mhm.
it used to be straight to streaming was like direct to video was right 10,
Yes,
15 years ago.
sure.
Now straight to streaming, we've got shows like The Rings of Power, we've
Yeah.
got
The
some
Gray
tremendous
Man.
movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
right.
we need a new term for that, and maybe we should just come up with it right now.
Yeah, I don't know what yeah, that's a good one. What
I
should
mean,
that
B movie
be?
always fits,
That's
I
true.
guess,
That's been
but
that's been a
like
term for a while. Yeah,
yeah, but straight to video is kind of misleading now, and
it is.
that's why it was kind of hard for me to sort of wrap my brain around Netflix and Amazon and these others
Right.
making such good content
Yeah.
because I'm always thinking it's direct to streaming. How good could this be?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. We need to brainstorm that. Yeah, B
Yeah,
movie I
yeah.
think kind of fits, but yeah, we
But
need to
direct to
brainstorm
video's
some
out.
ideas.
I mean,
Right.
it doesn't really go
That doesn't
anymore.
really happen
Yeah,
even anymore. It
right,
really
right.
does. Every movie goes straight to
So something to
streaming.
think
So
about.
all right, so now we're going to jump into our review of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. This is a new series on Amazon Prime. So if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you already have access to this series. The first two episodes are available. They dropped them both. We just wanted to jump in and kind of give our thoughts on these first two episodes, what we think. We're both Lord of the Rings fans. We've both seen those movies a number of times. And so I thought this was just an intriguing idea to do a series set in Middle Earth, this vast, rich world that J.R.R. Tolkien created many decades ago. Streaming has kind of changed the game on what you can do with storytelling. This kind of longer form stories where you can kind of spend more time with these characters, explore the locations more, and just get into the depth a bit more. I mean, Lord of the Rings, they're 3 hour movies, right? It's a 9 hour saga. If you count The Hobbit, it's double that. So I just think it was a cool idea, and I was excited when I heard about it, and it didn't disappoint for me. I really enjoyed both of these episodes. It's set thousands of years before even The Hobbit. The Hobbit is the prequel to Lord of the Rings. This is well before even that happened. I just felt instantly transported back to Middle Earth. I thought they captured the look, the kind of tone, the vibe of Peter Jackson's movies. I really felt like that was recaptured in a really good way here. It starts off with this kind of epic prologue, and we kind of get, if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, if you don't know what any of this is about, you can really just jump into the show, and they kind of explain it all up front. I think
Hmm.
knowing about the world obviously helps, but they set it up all for you really well here, I think, so that anyone can kind of just jump in. This is the most expensive television series of all time, and it's all on screen. I felt that they really, again, captured the look of these huge productions, these huge movies that Peter Jackson made over in New Zealand. They did shoot a lot of these episodes in New Zealand as well.
Mm.
And so we're going back to these, beautiful landscapes. And also the visual effects are incredible. I mean, what they're doing here, uh, again, it's seamless. It's on par with the films for me. I think what I read was they're spending almost 100 million per episode, which is incredible. There's 8 episodes in the season, so it's almost $1 billion for the show,
Man.
which is crazy. But they have obviously a lot of faith in this because there is such a fervent fan base here, that you've got built in, not just from the movies, but from the books that have been around for, like I said, decades now. So, just incredible work here. I want to get kind of some of your initial thoughts before I get into more of the details. What were just kind of your overall thoughts on these first 2 episodes?
It is very good. I will say that I don't geek out too much on keeping track of all the history and lineages and all that. I mean, I picked up on the fact that Elrond's here and
Sure.
Gladriel's here,
Right.
and Sauron obviously is
Sure.
the big bad evil.
Yeah.
And so it did get I did get lost a few times when they started throwing out the elven names and that kind of thing.
Sure. Right.
But it is a very good show. The effects are on, that's exactly what my thought was. The effects are on par with the original films.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they exceed it,
Yeah.
but they're just as good. They're just as good, and they were phenomenal back, in the early 2000s
Right.
too.
Right.
The sets, like the little villages and such, are just always really neat to see. I guess I'll give more detail too, but overall, I thought the first 2 episodes, they show a lot of potential. And I
Yes.
think that there were times where I felt like it didn't have the same tone, in the sense that in the films, it always seems like you were just about to get to some major thing happening. Like it was, a
Right.
lot more intensity,
Yes. Sure.
wasn't exactly the same. And this
Yeah.
felt definitely more like a show that's going to take its time and to get a lot more into the characters. And if that pays off, then I think I'll look back at the first 2 episodes and go, oh, that was really great,
Right.
because now we know these characters and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping it does lead to some really good payoffs, and it probably will. I don't think it's gonna fall short, but yeah, that's my overall impressions of it.
That's great. Yeah, I felt much the same way. Yeah, these first two are a little bit slower paced, so keep that in mind. Again, this is an 8 episode kind of
Yeah.
journey we're going to take, and they've already ordered season two, so there's going to be multiple
Oh,
seasons to this. That it's not just going to be a one off. So it's a again thousands of years before the movie, so there's so much
yeah.
time that they can cover. The series can last a very long time if they want it to. So
And is it going to be one? I don't know what the rings really are, but is it going to be one ring per season?
I
That kind
would
of thing.
doubt it. There's a lot of rings. So there are 9 rings given just to the men.
Oh,
Then I believe there are 7 to the
that's right.
dwarves and
I
3 to
remember
the
now.
elves.
Yeah.
So
They
there's
yeah,
a
they referenced that in the first Lord of the Rings movie, right?
exactly
In the
very
prologue.
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
yeah, I would imagine that closer to the end of this season, I think all the rings will probably be out there. Maybe not the
Mm,
one ring, but I'm
right.
assuming that we'll get to all the rings by the end of this season, would be my
Yeah.
guess. But we'll
Right.
have to wait and see. So, getting into a little more detail, I want to talk a little bit more about the effects. I mean,
Hmm.
these effects are incredible. Not just the visual effects, which I'll talk about more, but the production design. Just some of these sets that they're building are very elaborate, and I really enjoyed that kind of stuff. The costumes,
Hmm.
every character is in accurate costumes and makeup, the makeup and hair
Hmm.
effects and all that. Just
Yeah.
everything that goes into, you think about how many characters are on screen just in the little hobbit village, or I guess they're called Harfoots
Yeah.
at this
Right.
point in history. But
Yep.
just looking at that, and all those characters are just so interesting to watch. So they're doing a great job with those technical aspects. again, the visual effects, there are 10 visual effects companies working on this show, over
Oh,
1,500 visual effects artists, and
wow.
they're working on over 9,500 visual effects shots.
Hmm.
So probably more visual effects in this series than I would imagine any other in history.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think there are any others that can come close to this. And the visual effects artists, I looked at some interviews with these guys, and they wanted it to be so good that it could not only play well on your big screen TV at home, but they wanted to be able to show this in an IMAX theater. And there were actually very few IMAX theaters that showed these first two episodes across the country.
Oh, some
And
of them did.
yeah, and supposedly
Hmm.
they looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, that's just crazy to think about, that kind of huge format, that they,
Hmm.
they want it to look as detailed on that screen as it does at home,
Right. If
which is
anything, and I try not to get into too many comparisons in my mind
sure,
because it's
right,
not necessarily fair to compare it to a film that you go
right,
see at the theater. First of all, I mean,
sure,
you're at a disadvantage anytime you try to evaluate a film on a screen that's much smaller and you don't have
yeah,
as good a surround sound and all that kind of stuff.
right,
I will say, when you're talking about visuals, yeah, I mean, like the scenery behind them and some of
mm,
these epic shots of I mean they're CGI or mats or combination or
yeah,
whatever,
right,
and they're just as good as the movies. And again, I hate to compare, but it's hard when I love forced perspective shots, and
sure,
there are quite a few compared to I guess most shows. There are quite a few in especially episode 2
okay,
of
yeah,
this show. But like Fellowship of the Ring, I mean, is probably like the crowning achievement of like the best forced perspective ever.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
nothing comes close to the
No,
amount of stuff that they did, not just visual tricks, but involving like automation and machinery
yeah,
to move things to keep them in perspective. You know what I mean? Like if
right,
you watch some of the behind the scenes stuff,
yes, yes,
just
incredible.
so much. So I can't compare, but I will
Mhm.
say that what they did with episode 2 with the forced perspective was good.
Yeah,
Because I'm always looking for the tricks to see if the eye
sure,
lines are there and that kind of thing. And I thought that was good. I love forced perspective stuff,
yeah.
so that's gives big points for me.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the casting. I think that, all of these characters are so well cast. They just look the part. We've got Elrond and
Mhm.
Galadriel, who are characters we've seen before. And I thought the casting on both of them was really well done. Just the acting performances are good across the board. I really
Yes,
feel
yeah,
that they're into their characters, they're into this world, they're invested in what's going on and in the story that they're telling. So I really enjoyed all the characters, and I kind of wanted to break it down by character and storyline briefly. Also, I wanted to mention it's directed by J.A. Bayona, who's a director I like. He did Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. He also did a movie called A Monster Calls. So he's a good director, and I think this is probably some of his best work. I think he's doing a really good job, again, just presenting this world, this intricate story with all these characters. It's a lot to juggle, and I think he did it really well here.
me too.
Um,
Yeah.
what we have here is we have great opening scene with Galadriel and kind of this ice castle. Her and all these elves are on this journey to, find Sauron, find the orcs. She's seeking out this evil that killed her brother. So she's got this great backstory motivation for what she's
Mhm.
doing up front. The actress who plays her, Morfydd Clark, is doing a really good job playing her character, and I just
She is
really
really
like.
good.
Yeah,
It's hard to you think about Kate Blanchett, and
yeah,
and she's obviously a tremendous actress.
definitely.
And so I think they found someone that kind of makes me not think, oh, she's not as good as Kate Blanchett. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, and it's different. I like
Mhm.
that they're setting these characters apart from who they are in the
Yeah.
movies. It's so much time later
Yeah.
that we're not.
Right.
You get the sense that it's that person, but
Hmm.
they're at a very different place in their life.
Right.
And so she has this great kind of action scene with the snow troll, and
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of got things
That's
off
good.
to a kind of exciting start, which I thought was a wise choice. Elrond is played by Robert Aramayo. I think he's doing a very good job as well, playing this
Hmm.
younger version, kind of more idealistic version of Elrond, I guess you could say.
Sure. Yeah.
And I really liked what we got into with him. His relationship was with Galadriel was great, but in episode 2 we get his relationship with the dwarf prince Durin. And I really liked all that stuff. I thought the
Hmm.
character building there was just really well done. really like that relationship. Had a lot of fun watching that unfold. We also get maybe my favorite storyline so far is an elf, kind of, I think he's like a ranger named Arendir, and a human woman named Bronwyn. And they're kind
Hmm.
of like this forbidden love story, that we've kind of seen with Aragorn and Arwen almost, but it's a little bit
Right.
different. She's got a young son, they're kind of living in this village and this orc attacks. And
Hmm.
that's what happens in episode 2, and that's kind of a really really well done scene that I really
It's one of the
liked.
best scenes of the 2 episodes.
I
Yeah.
agree. It reminded me a little of Sam Raimi, like kind of the horror
The quick cuts
action,
and
yeah,
stuff.
quick
Yeah.
cuts, and
Yeah.
when
Sure.
she goes to
Sure.
chop his head off and then she sets it down on the
Yeah.
bar. It was just
Yeah. It
such
was,
a great moment.
I agree.
So yeah, I'm enjoying that stuff as well. The
Hmm.
Harfoots, we're getting this young Harfoot named Nori. We're kind of following her. She's kind of bucking the system a little bit of a rebel, and she has some fun moments. And then she's met by this. I call him the Star Man. I don't know who he is.
Hmm.
It's kind of a big mystery. He kind of falls out of the sky, and she's kind of trying to hide him and take care of him and figure out what he's doing there. Do you have any theories on this character?
Well, I had a little bit of time to go out on the internets
Okay.
and look it up. So,
Okay.
I do we
Oh, so
want
you
to?
do you know who he is? Have they revealed
I don't
this?
officially know. I
Okay.
just know what a couple sources had speculated, which
Gotcha.
honestly wasn't that much of a stretch.
Okay.
But I don't know if you want to spoil that, or I don't even know if I know what you're going to say. So I want to,
Well, I have a theory. I haven't looked up anything about this. I'm
yeah,
just going
yeah,
off of what we've seen in the show thus far.
right.
And there was this image that just stuck out in my head. I said, they're kind of telegraphing who this guy is, I think, by doing this. When he's laying down, when he first lands, they zoom out from above him, and it
Hmm.
looks like the eye of Sauron. So I'm guessing that he's Sauron, but I'm really not sure. I've seen other people say that he's Gandalf. I've seen all
Yeah,
kinds of different speculation out there.
right, right.
But my guess is that he's actually Sauron.
Oh, really? So,
Yeah.
okay, they're completely different directions then between
Right.
Gandalf and Sauron.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I'd read the Gandalf thing, but
Okay.
I didn't really get that. I mean, obviously he's, maybe he's a wizard. I don't even know,
Yeah, he's talking to fireflies, so he's got some kind of mystical ability, right? So yeah, we'll just have to wait
Yeah.
and see. So those are kind of the main storylines that we're following, and again, I'm enjoying all of them. I think
Hmm.
Galadriel being lost at sea, that was an intriguing, kind of exciting
Yeah.
element. I thought worked pretty well. I guess there's the man on the boat that comes up. We don't know who he is either.
Right.
Any theories on that?
No, no, I have no idea.
I've heard he might be an ancestor of Aragorn, maybe Isildur or somebody, but that
Yeah,
seems
maybe.
like we're too far in the past for it to be that guy. So maybe it's
Yeah,
like his
yeah.
great great
They can't all be
grandfather.
connected.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of hope it's just a new character.
Yeah.
So yeah, that first episode titled "A Shadow of the Past" I thought was a really good setup. Again, it's a little bit slower, because it is setting up this world again for people who haven't seen anything about this, setting up our characters who we're going to be following throughout the show. The second episode titled "Adrift" I thought was much better. It moved a lot faster. I thought it dove deeper into the characters, and we got to know them a little bit better. So yeah, all in all, thoroughly enjoyed these first two. Think it's a great, kind of entryway to this new show. Again, for new viewers to come into this world. It's my wife's favorite film series of all time, so she was super into it, loved every second of it,
Ah,
as did I. So it's their biggest show of all time, 25 million viewers in the first 24 hours on the series, which is
wow.
incredible. So yeah, a lot of people are obviously interested in the show. What it's doing well is, for all the fans that have been around for so long, it's really sticking to what Tolkien set up. I mean,
Hmm.
I haven't read all of the Lord of the Rings books. I'm actually in the middle of reading Fellowship right now. I've read The
Oh, are you?
Hobbit a couple of times.
Hmm.
So I am a fan. I'm not like hardcore, super geeky into it, as
Gotcha.
some people
Yeah.
are, but I think that they're really sticking to the core ideas that he
Yeah, it
had,
would
which
seem
is,
so. Yeah.
yeah, it's that classic good versus evil. It's
Hmm.
kind of, all these disparate people coming together to fight
Yeah.
together. It's really, really, really good stuff.
Yeah, they did good.
I think they're doing a good job with it. The characters, the story, the setting, the themes, they're all there. So I think it's working out pretty well, and we'll just have to see where it goes in the future.
Yep.
All right, so now it's time to jump into our top 10 favorite fantasy films of all time. This was a difficult list to put together, pretty broad genre of films here to choose from. So we really had to dive deep. I really had to figure out what are my favorites, what are the ones I can rewatch, what are the ones that stand out in my mind the most. That's kind of what I was thinking, when I heard the word fantasy, what came to my mind? That's kind of the premise I started with. Actually, all my movies on my shelves back here are separated by genre, not
Okay.
alphabetical as most people do it. I do it a little bit differently. So I had a shelf that I could just go to and see, okay, here's my fantasy
Ah,
films that I own. And I could kind of, look at those. There are a few on my list that I don't own, but, I could at least jump off from there. I think for me, fantasy movies, more than any other movie, are about escapism. It's about kind of going into another world, kind of taking a journey with some characters that you really like. Technically, all films are fantasy, they're all fiction, unless they're based on a true
right.
story, right? The fantasy genre is really interesting. It really just kind of takes things a step further into kind
Hmm.
of the, more magical, mystical realm. As much as it's escapism, as much as it is, kind of doing these things that we don't see every day, it's very much, I think the best ones comment on our world and who we are as people and what we think about and what we desire. And, these kind of timeless themes of, love and sacrifice and fear and self-discovery, redemption, all these kind of foundational, truths that we hold to that are displayed on screen in this kind of magnificent way, this kind of larger than life way. So I like all that. I was really thinking about all those kinds of themes, which ones are the most emotional, which ones are the most fun to watch. All those I was thinking of to kind of complete this top 10 list. I did not include any sci-fi fantasy. So there's some crossover with movies like, Star Wars is a great example of where they're kind of
Yeah, yeah.
wizards in space, basically using magic. But
Right.
I excluded all that, and I also excluded any musicals. So,
Mm.
a lot of the Disney movies are fantasy movies, but they are musically based. So I didn't
Hmm.
include
Yeah.
those. I didn't include even stuff like Wizard of Oz,
All right.
which,
Yeah.
is technically a musical as well. So I tried to just whittle it down to just basic fantasy films, kind of fairy tales, stuff based on folklore, ancient legends,
Hmm.
also, what's been dubbed high fantasy, which is stuff like Lord of the Rings, kind of an
Yeah.
epic kind of tale. Yeah, that was kind of my thought process going through it. What was yours?
Yeah, and you made some good points on that. Yeah, and the crossover thing is a bit tricky, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be pretty subjective. So
Yeah.
someone might hear a film in this list and go, "Well, I don't consider that fantasy." That's okay. That's
Right.
like I do. So,
Sure.
and but I did limit it quite a bit to the no sci-fi thing. I pretty much adhered to.
Yeah.
I also decided to go no superhero films because
Yes.
if you look up fantasy, you're going to see all the superhero films in it.
Sure.
Yeah, I threw all those out because I'm
Yeah.
interested in more of something that doesn't get enough attention already, for one thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then also it's a tough one, but I did no time travel elements.
Yeah.
And it's just a personal choice. Like this movie, like I had on my list, Frequency.
Okay.
It's a really good movie, but it's kind of a time travel thing. Not really, but kind of.
Right.
So movies like that, I decided to expel.
Right.
So I don't think I've got any time travel movies in here.
Okay.
And then one of the last criteria I used was only one from a series. I could
Yeah.
probably put all three Lord of the Rings in here, maybe
Right.
even a Hobbit or two.
Sure.
But let's have some variety, right? And
Yeah.
and you get the point. I mean, I could talk an
Yes.
hour about Fellowship or Two
Sure.
Towers or even the Hobbit films,
Yeah.
and let's just stick to one in the series. So that's just an example.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes.
those were some of the criteria I used.
All right. Well, let's jump into our honorable mentions. We wanted to do that before we get into our actual top 10 list. So I'll kick us off. I separated my honorable mentions. There's so many movies I wanted to put in this list. It was really hard to make some of these cuts.
It is, yeah.
So I wanted to start with some classics that
Okay,
didn't quite make the
good,
cut.
good, yeah.
One that was in my list for a long time. I ended up taking it out actually just last night and switching it with something else from 1940. It's a movie called The Thief of Baghdad. And this is based on the 1001 Nights, Arabian Tales, Aladdin,
Oh, oh, okay, okay.
story. So there's a lot of elements, for kids like me who grew up with the Disney Aladdin, will recognize, like the genie in the lamp, and Jafar is the main villain here.
Okay.
Abu is in this movie, but he's not a monkey; he's a little boy. So it's a little different from what
Hmm.
you might be used to with this story, but it's
Okay.
super fun adventure movie, huge Hollywood production. I mean, this is
Oh,
elaborate sets, groundbreaking special effects here. I mean, this was the first ever use of a blue screen in a
really?
film. Yeah,
Oh, I actually wondered how far that went back. So back to
yeah.
1940, huh?
1940. Yeah, they were experimenting
Wow.
with that. So just
Yeah.
incredible to watch. You can actually watch it right now on HBO Max. So I highly recommend it. It's
Okay.
an old movie, but it's all Technicolor. So it looks beautiful. The sets are very colorful. One I had fun with. I've watched it a couple of times. And so I wanted to mention that one here. Another one that almost made it from 1957, The Seventh Seal. This is a
I've heard
very
of it.
unique kind
Yeah.
of darker fantasy movie. A knight returns from the Crusades and he has a chess match with the physical personification of death.
Oh.
And so it's a very interesting film, very cerebral, made by a guy named Ingmar Bergman, who's a Swedish filmmaker.
Hmm.
This one you can also watch on HBO Max right now, but a movie I thoroughly enjoy. I actually have the Criterion
Hmm.
Blu-ray of it up there. Last one I'll mention for the classics is from 1963. Ray Harryhausen did the effects in this, who's the master of stop motion
Hmm.
animation. It's called Jason and the Argonauts,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and this is a classic. It's one I've watched a
I've seen
number
that
of
one. Yeah.
times. Oh, have you? Oh,
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I like that movie a lot. It's actually, I found out it's Tom Hanks's favorite movie.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So it's one that
What's
I've
that?
watched a couple of times and I really enjoy. The skeleton sequence where he battles all these
Yeah.
skeletons. It's kind of a classic
Yeah.
moment in cinema. So yeah, those are some of my classics. I'll let you run down a couple more of yours before I jump into a few more of mine.
Sure. Yeah. Mine are all pretty modern.
Okay.
So here's some. I'll probably start with ones that almost made the list. King Arthur is one of them. I do really enjoy the film.
Okay.
It's like top five film score of all time in
Yeah.
there. The film itself, I feel like there's not a ton of. It could use a little more character development. I feel
Okay.
like.
Sure.
But it is a very good movie.
Yeah.
So that's one I would have thrown in the top 10 if I could. But
Right.
another one is Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay.
That's a very just visually dazzling
Yeah.
film. It's a
Sure.
little weird, and I
It
never
is.
mind that per se. And I've seen it twice, and I really can't wait till the next time I watch it again. It's got a lot of rewatchability factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing to look at and
Yeah.
great acting and such.
Yeah.
Another one I'll throw out there. This one's a little bit older, and that's Edward Scissorhands. I think we've talked
Oh,
about that.
sure.
We talked
Yeah.
about it with the film scores
We
actually,
did.
and Fury
Yeah.
Road as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
both really good film scores.
Yeah.
But yeah, Edward Scissorhands has this kind of a special place in my heart. A lot of it was filmed just a couple miles from my house in Lakeland, Florida,
Oh, yeah.
and so that's pretty neat. And of course, a lot of the set pieces are actual things that are still there today.
Right.
It's a fun film. I enjoy it for a lot of different reasons, but I wouldn't say it's top 10 for this list.
Right.
So that's three I'll throw out. Do you want to throw out a few more?
Yeah, I'll go with a few more. The 1980s was just like chock full of great fantasy movies. So I've got a
Sure.
few from that era. Willow, which I've already talked about. That's one of the reasons I didn't include it because we talked about it on our Ron Howard
Ah,
podcast that we did.
yeah.
That's one I really like. The Princess Bride was very close to making it.
Hmm.
Time Bandits by Terry Gilliam, I like a lot. Legend from Ridley Scott, excellent,
Hmm.
excellent film. I really like. I even like Conan with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The first one
Oh,
is good. I actually prefer the second one, Conan the Destroyer.
oh, really? Okay.
So that one was one I considered. And Big
Okay.
Trouble in Little China.
Oh, yeah. I saw that in
John
the
Carpenter.
theater.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was
Cool.
pretty young, but yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that in the theater. It
I
was
like
weird.
that.
Still
Yeah,
is, I'm
it's a
sure, but
weird movie, but it's a fun one.
yeah, yeah.
There's a few directors that I wanted to mention too who
Oh,
don't usually do fantasy that have just done a couple. One is Martin Scorsese, who did a movie called Hugo back in 2011,
oh, yeah, I never saw
and
that one.
you should watch it if you can
Really?
find the 3D version.
Hmm.
I haven't seen it in 3D, but I would imagine the 3D is incredible in that film.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
just from watching it just in 2D, I can see how that would be quite an experience.
I'm gonna see if I can find that then.
You
Yeah.
should. Zack Snyder did a movie called Sucker Punch that I'm a big
Oh
fan
yeah,
of as
that was
well.
okay. That was okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's more of a psychological fantasy, so it's a
Hmm.
little different. But I definitely
Hmm.
considered that one. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I'm a big fan of that one. Alfonso Cuarón directed that. It's my favorite of that whole series. Warcraft by Duncan Jones, I thought was a really cool movie
Oh
that
really?
should have gotten a sequel, but it didn't, unfortunately.
Did that? I
Uh,
think that one bombed, didn't it?
it did. It did,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I never
Yeah.
saw it. I never saw
Spent
it.
a lot of money on it. I think you would like it. It's pretty neat.
Yeah,
It's I've never played the games, but
yeah, I have not either. Yeah.
just as a fan of fantasy filmmaking, it's really well done. Do you have a few more you wanted to run down
Yeah,
real
I can
quick?
run through them if you want. Jack the Giant Slayer.
It's a cool one.
I yeah, I don't. I read online that people hate this movie. I don't really
Yeah.
know why. I really like it.
Yeah.
And I have it in 3D. It's
Oh, cool.
great,
Okay,
great in
great.
3D. Journey to the Center of the Earth,
Hmm.
and the sequel. Those are both really good.
Yep.
I thought about those. Next one, is a Tom Hanks movie, Big. Have you ever seen Big?
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
that's a
fun
really
one.
good. It
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Funny. It's a really
It
funny
is.
movie.
It is.
And then I don't think you mentioned the new Clash of Titans.
No, but I like, the original, of
Yeah.
course, Ray Harryhausen did those effects.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do like the remake. I actually prefer Wrath of the Titans, I think. But
Hmm.
yeah, both of those new ones are pretty cool.
Yeah, I have both of those in 3D actually. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then Narnia, there's three or
Mm.
four films, and I like all of them,
Yeah,
but
there's
none of them
three.
are just like blow me away. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
okay,
And they're all really good.
sure.
I need to go back and rewatch those. Then we've got The Last Airbender,
Okay,
another vilified film that I
yes.
like, and mostly because of the 3D, but I don't mind the
Yeah,
film, especially,
yeah,
I mean, if you're watching it with kids. I mean, it's very
yeah,
kid friendly,
sure.
and those 3D effects really pop.
Yeah,
Um,
I gotta get you to watch the animated series at some point so we can have a whole discussion about all
oh
of
boy.
things Airbender.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
it would be a fun discussion because
There's
the
a lot of
show,
content, isn't there?
well, there's 3 seasons,
Oh,
so it's
okay.
not a ton.
Oh,
They
okay.
did a sequel series, which I actually think is better,
Mm,
which
okay.
lasted 4 seasons. But that would just be a fun conversation. I know you're not an animation guy, but it would just be interesting. Maybe even just watching because they based the first movie on that first season,
Oh,
so
really?
maybe to
Yeah.
compare the
Well,
two would be interesting.
yeah, if we get on to that podcast,
Yeah.
I'd watch the first season.
Okay.
If we're gonna
Cool.
do a Last Airbender,
Yeah.
analysis.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Because that movie's come up a number of times already, which is I think
It
it's funny.
has, yeah, yeah. It's got a lot of hate, not by me
Right.
so much. I saw it twice in the theater. I
I
mean,
know. I
it can't be
know.
that bad.
Right.
And then two more.
Yeah.
Prince of Persia. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I don't mind that one either. A lot of people don't
Yeah,
like it, but I think
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Right. It gets a lot of hate too. I don't get it.
Yeah. I wanted to mention just the last few here, some animated films, and there are some animated films on my list, but these didn't quite
Okay.
make the cut. One was the hardest to cut, probably, was Princess Mononoke. This is a Studio Ghibli film. It's a Japanese movie.
Okay.
So it's an anime. It's by Hayao Miyazaki, who's kind of like the Disney of Japan, basically.
Oh,
He's an
really? Hmm.
incredible storyteller, animator, just fantastic. Princess Mononoke was very close. Tales from Earthsea, which actually his son Goro Miyazaki directed.
Oh.
That one's based on a fantasy series of novels, and I think it's highly underrated. Not a lot of people talk about that when they talk about Studio Ghibli movies, but those are two that I had to mention that I think are excellent. Another Zack Snyder movie, Legend of the Guardians, which
Oh, I've
is
never seen that one.
it's the only animated film he's ever directed, and it's gorgeous. The 3D on it, I would again imagine, is great. It was released in 3D back in 2010, and
Okay.
I did get to rewatch it this week, and it's just fantastic. I really,
Hmm.
really like it. One from Pixar that I like is Brave. I think that
Oh
is
yeah,
an
that's decent.
excellent,
Yeah, that's
excellent
decent.
story. I really like that one a lot. Mother daughter kind of storyline.
Yeah.
And then a recent one from Disney is Raya and the Last Dragon.
Oh.
If you've got Disney Plus, you have access to this movie. It is really cool. A really cool
Hmm.
world that they built out, a really cool story that they told. Exciting, just action packed, really cool fantasy stories. All right, so those are our honorable mentions. Now we're going to jump into our top 10 fantasy films. All right, we're kicking things off with my number 10. So, starting at the bottom for our top 10, my number 10 favorite fantasy film is The Black Cauldron. This is a Disney animated movie from 1985. It was directed by Ted Berman and Richard Rich, who worked on The Fox and the Hound, which is a movie I grew up on. It's 80 minutes long. It's very quick runtime. It's easy to watch. It's the 25th Disney animated film, and it's based on the Chronicles of Pryden by Lloyd Alexander. So that is based on, I think, the first two books in his series, and it's just really, really cool movie. It's very different from what you typically get from Disney. I like it because it's kind of the prototypical fantasy story and characters. You've got, your farm boy turned hero. You've got your princess, damsel in distress character, your kind of cute sidekick, your comic relief, and then your wise mentor and your terrifying villain. So it's kind of just checks all the boxes as far as that goes. It's got some good voice talent. John Hurt plays the bad guy, the Horned King, and he is very scary. It's a really, really great character design, pretty simple, but really well done. It's narrated by John Huston, who's a prolific Hollywood director from the 50s, 60s. He did Maltese Falcon and Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Asphalt Jungle, African Queen. Great, great director who I really like, and he narrates the film. It is the first Disney film to use Dolby Stereo. It was all recorded in Dolby Stereo, the first Disney film to do so, and it's also the first Disney film to feature CG animation. And so it was groundbreaking on a number of levels there. Also, the first Disney film to feature the PG rating. All films before this were G. This one was a little too scary, and so they had to give the PG rating for this one, and it bombed. It bombed big time. It was a $44 million budget, the most expensive Disney film to date at that time, and it only grossed 21 million. So people were not so into this when it was released, and it's unfortunate because it's a really good one. It has a great score by Elmer Bernstein, who we talked a little bit on our score podcast. He did The Ten Commandments, The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, the original True Grit. Just an excellent composer, doing some great, great work here. And so, I like it again because it's just that kind of classic hero's journey. You've got a magical sword, you've got an evil kind of sorcerer, an army of the undead, all these skeletons that come after them to fight them. You've got, goblins and all kinds of creatures in it. It's just a really cool world, and just an easy watch. Memorable characters I like, and just kind of an enjoyable adventure to go on. So
yeah, I have not seen that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's very underseen. It's become a cult classic though. Over time, it's kind of gained popularity, and so I had to mention it because it's one I visited a number of times and I think is very, very underrated. All right, so that's my number 10. What is yours?
My number 10 is a 90s film called Matilda.
Oh.
And this is a great family film starring Mara Wilson, Danny DeVito, and Rhea Perlman. And it's about this little girl who is brilliant. And her parents are very neglectful. I mean, they're downright abusive. The film is not, I mean, it's more of a lighthearted comedy in a lot of ways.
Right.
But I mean, they're just very neglectful and just mean to her and stuff. And they don't realize what a gem they have in Matilda. Danny DeVito directed this movie, and he's hilarious in it. There's really some great comedy in it. But essentially, she ends up finally going to school, and the school is a really awful school, but she makes some friends, and then she finds out that she has some special powers that she can use. And it's just a terrific family film. If you get a chance to find this one, I would. I've rewatched it so many times, and it's just probably my favorite movie I've seen Danny DeVito in.
Yeah, that's great. I have not seen that one. That's one that I guess passed by me as I was growing up. So yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. All right, jumping into my number 9 is a film called The Dark Crystal. This is directed by Jim
film.
Jim Henson and Frank Oz, the Muppet guys. So
right.
They kind of took everything that they learned on the Muppet Show and the Muppet movies that they had made and took it to the next level, basically. This is the first and only live action film featuring no human characters.
Mm.
It is all puppets. Every single
Yeah,
character on
yeah.
screen is a fantastically designed puppet and totally believable and just you. It's incredible how they can get you to invest so much in these characters and in this
Hmm.
world just with these things that they've made that they're puppeteering.
Yeah.
The performances by the not only the voice actors but the puppeteers are just so amazing, so
Hmm.
fluid in their movements, and it's just such a rich fantasy world. This kind of ancient world that they've designed. So cool. They're so well done. The production design is excellent. And it's just one of those classic good versus evil stories. A great kind of underdog story as well. It's really, really well done. I like everything about this movie. I think it's really well paced. I think it's well written. Some of the dialogue's a little clunky in places, but I just think it is, as far as fantasy movies goes, it's one of the best because of, again, the world they're building out, the technical side of things. What they were able to do with these incredible puppets is just really amazing. There was a sequel series. I don't know if you saw on
Oh,
Netflix.
no, I didn't.
Yeah, it's called Age of Resistance. It came out a couple years back, and
Okay.
it only lasted one season, but it's well worth watching. It's
Okay.
a return to this world, 30 something years later.
Is it live action again, or is
It
it with the?
is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Huh.
all did it all with
Okay.
puppets again, and
Huh.
even more incredible because they spent even more
Yeah.
money on it, and kind of learned from the past and the intricate puppet work,
Right.
and great voice cast they got. Mark
Hmm.
Hamill's in there as
Oh,
one of the
okay.
Skeksis, and it's yeah, definitely worth watching if you're a fan of Dark Crystal. If you even remotely enjoy it, I would highly recommend watching that Netflix show. So yeah, I had to include Dark Crystal. It's just one that I've watched a number of times, and I'm always just amazed by what they were able to do with that film.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's been a long time,
Okay,
but I did like it and definitely appreciate the puppetry and
yeah,
what they put into it. Yeah,
definitely.
it was
Yeah.
really a lot different than Muppet Show and things they'd done before it.
Yeah. That's the thing too, is that there's really not a ton of humor in it. It's really
Hmm.
a very serious story,
Yeah,
which is interesting to see those guys tackle that kind of subject matter and go that route. But yeah, really, really well done movie.
good.
All right, what is your number nine?
Mine's going to tie in really well. My number
Okay.
nine is Labyrinth.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good one. That's a good
which
one.
is obviously, I mean, also Henson. I mean, it was, and we talked about this. I briefly mentioned it with the Film Score podcast because the
Right.
music I really love. I'm not sure someone these days could sit down and watch Labyrinth for the first time and appreciate it because, I mean, the Bowie stuff is very, very 80s and that kind of thing. I just happen to love it because I grew up with it.
Yeah.
But I love the puppet work. I
Right.
can't remember exactly, some of the things they did with Dark Crystal, but in Labyrinth, I mean, it's not just puppets. It's that at one point for a major character, they've got a little person that
Yeah.
is in a costume,
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it, a rig, and
Yeah.
and operates the hands and legs and runs around even.
Sure.
And then there's a head on top of it that is remote controlled with for I mean numerous parts of the puppet are remote controlled by
Wow.
somebody, but yet it runs around. Like for the longest
Yeah.
time until I saw behind the scenes, I thought, how are they making the puppet do that?
Right.
It's movie magic. It's so
Yeah.
amazing.
It
And then
is.
they've got a giant robot puppet. I mean, there's all kinds of different puppets in it. And
Yeah.
the thing about Labyrinth is it is a comedy. And
Yeah.
I forget the writer's name from Monty Python though, but they brought him
Oh,
in,
okay.
and this is almost like a Monty Python comedy
Sure.
as a Muppet film
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's really dry humor
Right.
and it's really a lot of it's kind of random.
Right.
And like I said, I love the music. It may not be for everybody, but
Yeah.
I love the creativity. And then there's some forced perspective shots in it and a lot of trickery they do with what the viewer is seeing to pull
Yeah.
off what they do. It's and the performances are good too. Yeah, a little bit of criticism. Jennifer Connelly was only 15, and I think it was
Sure.
her first movie. Like
Right.
the first scene or so, I mean, the acting's really kind of off. But it might be the tone the director was that Henson was going for.
Yeah.
I don't really know. Or was it Oz? Was it Frank Oz that directed it?
I
Or
think
Henson?
I think it was
I forget
Oz, but
now.
I'm not
Yeah.
positive. Let me look.
Yeah.
I can look it up real quick. This is actually it was Henson. It was Henson. Yep,
Okay.
it was Henson.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it might have just been the tone he was searching for. I don't really know, but
Yeah,
I can't really blame her at age 15. And
sure.
then also the plot really kind of goes sort of all over the place,
Right.
and the way it wraps up is kind of weird. So it's not a perfect movie, but
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen it, gosh, 10, 20 times, maybe
sure.
30 over the years. So
Yeah,
it's definitely a top 10 for this
yeah,
category for
yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one I like too. I've seen it a number of times as well, and I actually really like it too. And yeah, the music, I think it's fun. I don't think it's too 80s. I think
Oh, that's good.
it's on the
That's good.
edge, but it holds up fairly well. You know,
Yeah.
Bowie, I think he's kind of timeless. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's fun. Yeah, it is
He's
funny.
mysterious, and then that works for the
Right.
film. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. No, he plays the Goblin King very well, I think.
Mhm.
And so yeah, yeah, that's another fun one. Yeah, that does tie in with Dark Crystal really well.
Yeah, if I can mention real quick too, there's a scene where Bowie pulls out these crystals in his
Yeah.
hand and he starts rotating them and he's doing
Right.
all kinds of things with them. And if you watch the behind the scenes, Bowie isn't doing that. He's got his
Oh,
hands behind his back, and there's an artist by the name of Michael Motion that does these really amazing things. He's kind of an acrobat, but he does things with like balls and bounces them and does just
okay.
crazy cool things. He's a performer, and he
Okay.
actually, so Bowie has his hands behind his arms behind his back, and he put his arms like through like the sleeves, and without even looking, because he's behind Bowie, he had to hold up his arms
Wow.
and do these things with the crystals, the balls or whatever they're called,
Right.
and just stuff like that is
That's
so cool. And
amazing.
you never would have known. I mean, most people probably thought it was Bowie doing that,
Right.
and nowadays, if you watch it, they probably think it was CGI, even though that
Right.
would be impossible.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fun one. I like that one a lot too. Okay, on to my number eight. This is a stop motion animated film. This is called Kubo and the Two Strings. Came out in 2016. It's by a company called Leica. They're known for their stop motion productions. Coraline. They did a bunch of these stop motion movies, directed by a guy named Travis Knight. And I got to watch it with the commentary. He gave a very detailed commentary, probably one of the most informative ones I've ever heard. He talked the
Wow.
entire way through the entire film, and just the amount of detail that goes into any stop motion movie, but this one
Yeah.
particularly is incredible. I mean, it's really meticulous work that takes years. I mean, this movie took 5 years to make,
Yeah. That's not a
and
quick process, stop
no,
motion.
not at all,
I
not at
appreciate
all.
it though. I mean, that's very painstaking, and it's an art form.
Yes, it absolutely is. And this film just has the most striking visuals. I mean,
Really.
really incredible shots of again, it's animated, but it's shots of nature, of the moon, of these,
Yeah.
the ocean. I mean, what they did with the water is something I've never seen in a stop motion movie.
Really.
So really just incredible visual storytelling. It's a very layered story, so you get multiple levels of kind of just this kid on this quest, but then there's kind of these under the surface there's all these other themes going on about family and forgiveness and
Hmm.
great cast. Art Parkinson is a young actor who plays Kubo. You have Charlie Theron in this as well.
Oh.
Matthew McConaughey is in this one
Oh,
too.
one of my
Rafe
favorites. Yeah.
Fiennes, yeah, Rafe Fiennes is in it. George Takei has a small role as well.
Hmm.
So lot of good actors lend their voices to it. Very emotional performances. It's all inspired by Japanese cinema. So
Hmm.
if you're a fan of Kurosawa, Miyazaki, you're going to get a lot out of this movie. Even if you're not, though, it's just a really interesting story that I found really kind of profound in a lot of ways. I think that was my third time watching it, and I really enjoyed every aspect of it. The music is excellent. Music kind of plays a part in the story. It's called the Two Strings because he has this instrument he plays that has these strings on it, and so it's really well done
Hmm.
on every level. So Kubo and the Two Strings, that's my number eight.
Good to know. I'll have to check that out. I do like stop motion animation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my number eight is a 1990 film called Mr. Destiny.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
And okay, yeah, back in that era, Jim Belushi was kind of a leading man, and this
Sure.
was one of the vehicles he was given.
Okay.
And he's a pretty funny guy. I'm not
He
really sure
is.
why he fell off the map, but in this movie, he plays sort of an exec, kind of a businessman who wishes, he's married, and he's got a decent job, but he's kind of in just sort of a rut. And then he wishes that his life would be, he meets Michael Caine, wishes to
Okay.
Michael Caine that his life would be different. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, the next scene, he's no longer in the life he had. He's married to like the president of the company's daughter, and he's mega rich, and he's that, I mean, so that, you know, he's got a different wife, he's got two kids that he didn't know he had, and all this
Right.
stuff. So it kind of shows what his life is like, if he had gone a different path, perhaps.
Okay.
I read, now, you're gonna think this is crazy, I have not seen It's a Wonderful Life.
Right. I'm saying this is very familiar.
So when I read up on it a little bit, I guess that is the plot, or very similar to It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
And so, but yeah, this is a very funny take on that. Jim Belushi is hilarious throughout. There's a lot of
Okay.
one-liners,
Yeah.
and I'd really recommend it if you can find it.
Okay.
Linda Hamilton plays the wife that he the wife that he was with, and then
Oh.
the one he kind of somewhat fantasizes about being with and ends up being with once he meets Michael Caine,
Uh-huh.
is played by Renee Russo.
Okay.
And so it's a really good cast. It's a
Yeah.
fun story. I've seen it numerous times over the years, and I really recommend it if you can find it. I don't know where it's streaming or anything. I didn't look that up, but it's
Okay.
hilarious.
Okay.
And I want to say too, another film that reminds me of is The Family Man with Nicolas Cage. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yes. Those are
Yeah.
all very similar plotted
Yes.
films.
Yeah. And but what's funny to me is I get thinking about it, and I'm like, well, Mr. Destiny is hilarious, and it's that kind of movie. And then
Right.
you got The Family Man, which is, that movie gets dark, you
Does.
know.
Yeah.
And I watched the trailer for Family Man, and they painted as kind of this lighthearted thing, and there's a little bit of comedy in it,
Sure.
but it's definitely sort of the darker version of that. And
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life, I'm assuming it's not necessarily a comedy. I've not, you know.
It's probably in between. I mean, I
Okay.
would say it leans a little more dramatic and darker.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it a comedy. It has definitely humor in it, but
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's interesting that all all three of those movies have a
Yeah,
similar
it's probably
plot.
probably other movies have too. But anyway, if
Yeah.
you can find Mr. Destiny, I still think
Okay.
it hold up because Jim Belushi's hilarious in it.
Yeah, I like
And
him.
I really enjoy that kind of plot, you know,
Sure.
because you know they end up learning the lessons about,
Yes.
you know, appreciate what you've got, or whatever, you know, whatever.
Exactly.
So
Right. Right.
that's my number 8.
Okay. Great. Great pick. Great pick. All right. On to my number seven, which is such a good movie. I wanted this one to be higher. From 1981, Excalibur. This
Mm.
is John Boorman's masterpiece. I mean, it is an incredible sort of epic, dark fantasy film. It
It
is
is dark, yeah.
really, yeah, it's pretty brutal. It takes, you know, the whole kind of silly, magical King Arthur thing very seriously, which I like. I think it's cool that, you know, legends like that have been around for so long. You can get like something like Sword in the Stone, something very light
Mhm.
and silly Disney animated movie, and then you can get something
Yeah,
like this out of it too.
yeah, sure.
So it's pretty neat. But it took a long time to get this movie made. He actually
Oh,
originally tried to make it in 1969.
oh, wow.
Was the first time he kind of had the screenplay, you know, written and shopped it around to studios. They all said it was way too expensive. The kind of big vision he had for it, so he had to wait, you know, about a decade until he was able to actually make it. The studio originally offered him, after he pitched it to them, they offered him Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was, the film rights, I guess, were already at Warner Brothers, and they said, "Hey, why don't you try to do Lord of the Rings? It's already kind of got a fan base." And he's like, "No, I'm not interested in that." So he had to wait, and eventually ended up getting it made. It's you know, just incredible. I got to listen to the commentary, and it's a very honest commentary. He kind of talks about the aspects of the movie that he thinks could be better, he didn't really like. And I think, you know, a lot of directors are kind of hard on their work in that way.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just see it as a kind of magnificent, wondrous presentation. It's really, really well cast. Nicole Williamson as Merlin is the best actor who's ever played that role. He's really, really good
Hmm.
portraying that character. You have Nigel Terry as Arthur, and he was cast when he was 35, but he's playing Arthur from the ages of 16 to, you know, in his 80s or whatever at the end of the movie. So you get this kind of, again, big epic story about his entire life, and it's really, really well done on a technical level. I think it's shot beautifully. The lighting in this is really good. The costumes, I mean, are excellent. The armor, a guy named Terry English built all the armor for all these characters, and you have huge armies, and you know this is, of course, before CGI, so these are actual actors wearing
Yeah.
actual armor, and you know, in these scenes, it's really incredible. I just like every aspect of this. I watched it last night again. I've seen it a number of times, and again, I'll go back to the cast. Helen Mirren is in this, and an early role for her, playing Morgana. One of the first roles for Liam Neeson. One of the
Hmm.
first roles for Patrick Stewart,
Oh,
Gabriel
interesting.
Byrne,
Oh yeah.
Kieran Hines, a lot of big British and Irish actors. It was all shot in Ireland,
Hmm.
and so a lot of Irish actors in this, and you know, it's just excellent. Again, cinematography was nominated for an Oscar. Alex Thompson did the cinematography on it. Has a very distinct look, and the look of it very much matches the tone. It's very dark, you know,
Yeah.
and it's very kind of bleak, and a lot of the subject matter, but it has great practical effects work. Again, pre CGI days, so they're doing a lot there. Excellent battles. The battles are very grounded, gritty, realistic. They're not these kind of sword
Choreographed.
fights. Yeah, the sword fights don't have a lot of flourishes in them. You know, it's very
Yeah.
much just brutal, kind of beating each other over the head with these
Oh, right.
weapons. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not that kind
Right.
of you know, Mask of Zorro type of, you know,
Yeah. That's what I'm
finesse
saying. Yeah.
kind of sword fighting. It's
Yeah.
very realistic.
Hmm.
So if you're into that kind of, you know, dark fantasy stuff, you know, it's R rated. But what it does well is it explores these characters. It
Hmm.
explores these themes of arrogance, of betrayal, you know, that are kind of timeless. So really well done. Good score here too by Trevor Jones. I think I
Oh, he
think the
did the
score.
Labyrinth score.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I looked
Yeah.
him up. That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Which
Yeah,
I
he did.
love. Which I love
Yeah,
his work on that. Yeah.
you'll like his work here too. Very good
Hmm.
fantasy
I'll have to
score.
find that.
You really should. You should track it down. It might be on HBO Max. I'm not sure. Um,
Okay.
Budget of only 11 million, and they do a
Hmm.
great job spending that money because it really looks like a huge production. Ended up
Yeah.
grossing 35 million, so it made its
Oh,
money back, but wasn't a huge hit.
yeah.
It's another kind of one of these cult hits over time. It's gained popularity. This is a favorite film of Zack Snyder, who is one of my favorite
Really.
directors. This is
Hmm.
the one
Yeah,
he
mine
cites
too.
as kind of his favorite movie. He says it's a perfect
Huh.
meeting of cinema and mythology. And so I totally agree with him there. It's very cinematic in how it looks and how it's presented, and it tells this kind of ancient mythological story very well. So yeah, got to watch Excalibur. It's a good one.
Yeah, I watched it back in the 90s and
Okay.
I don't remember liking it. I remember not
Okay.
liking it. But
Yeah.
it occurred to me when you were talking about that and my recollection of it. And I think this is part of the problem that I'm figuring out with a lot of older films.
Mhm.
By the when I was watching them would have been 80s, 90s. So films that are prior to that era,
Right.
let's say. And that's that the exposure that I had to those was often on TV on a full frame commercial infested production uh on a Saturday afternoon or something.
Right.
And so or I might have rented Excalibur and it would have been on VHS,
Yeah.
and even then it might have been full frame. I always tried to find letterbox VHSs if I could,
Yeah. Right.
but that might have been that always makes it's like the worst kind of presentation
Right. Yeah. The,
in
the
those
Blu-ray
senses.
I have is a phenomenal transfer. I mean, it
Yeah, I
really
need to
looks
rewatch
good.
it. Yeah, I need to rewatch it.
Definitely. All right. What's your number seven?
My number seven, moving forward in time a little bit, is Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle.
Okay. All right. Cool. That's a
And
fun one.
yeah, yeah. I saw the trailer and I thought, oh, this looks really good. It's probably going to be terrible.
Right.
Went to the theater and laughed my butt off. I
Yeah.
thought it was so funny.
It is.
And it's basically what you get from the trailer, but just
Yeah.
more of it.
Sure.
And I won't get into it a lot. I mean, obviously, Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. I mean, you mentioned
Mhm.
another movie that they had done together that I didn't even know of early in our podcast
Oh yeah,
here.
the Super Pets thing they just did.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right. And then also they did Central Intelligence, which is
Right.
hilarious, I
Right.
think.
Right.
And they just play well off each other.
They do.
And Jack Black is hilarious in this too.
Oh yeah, he's
And
the
it's
best.
just a great adventure and comedy movie. It's about almost as good as they get. But it's mostly for the comedy that I'm there. Yeah, I like the gaming references and that kind of thing. I do like this better than the original Jumanji because I
Okay.
hate the CGI in the original Jumanji.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's just almost unwatchable for the
Okay.
CGI. I mean, I love Robin Williams, and
Yeah.
it's a fun story,
Right.
but I prefer this sort of refreshed one, and it does
Okay.
tie into the original too,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number seven. Just a fun adventure, hilarious movie.
Yeah. That one is a lot of fun. I remember being very on the fence because I'm a huge Jumanji fan. The
Are
original
you?
Jumanji is one of my
Well, what do you think about the
movies.
CGI in Jumanji 1996?
It doesn't bother me really.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe because I grew up with it, and
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I don't know if I would say it holds up super well, but
Hmm.
it's an older movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it's overdone though. I think if
Yeah.
there were more CGI in it, it would be worse. They
Yeah.
try to do as much practically as they can. I remember the crocodile is practical, and like the lion,
It's
and
more when they open the floodgates and all the
yeah,
animals are running like amok. That's
exactly right,
where I'm
right.
like, oh, this looks horrible.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't look great, but like you said, Robin Williams makes that movie for me. Kirsten Dunst, Bonnie Hunt, the
Hmm.
cast is really
Sure. Yeah,
why
it's
I
not a
watched
bad
that movie.
movie. Yeah,
Right.
I like Jumanji. Yeah.
Sure, sure. But yeah, the sequel, Welcome to the Jungle, I thought was really well done. I even liked the next level,
Yeah,
which
I
was
do too.
the
Not
further
quite as
sequel.
much.
Yeah,
Not quite as much, but I do like it.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So those are fun for sure. All right, let's jump to my number six, which is another animated film. This is a very recent movie, just came out in 2020. It was actually an Apple TV Plus exclusive. So if you don't have Apple TV Plus, unfortunately, you can't watch it unless you get the Blu-ray. But it's called Wolf Walkers. And this is a movie by a company called Cartoon Saloon. They're a relatively new animation studio from over in Ireland, and they've done now a trilogy of films called the Irish Folklore Trilogy. They're not really connected, but they're all kind of based on various Irish folk tales.
Okay.
One of them is called Secret of Kells. The other one is Song of the Sea, and now this third one is Wolf Walkers, and it's
Hmm.
just probably the most beautiful animated movie I've ever watched. It is
Wow.
stunning, hand drawn animation.
Okay.
So it's not your typical 3D
Yeah.
computer generated stuff that we're getting a lot of today, which it's unfortunate that's taken over for me. As great as it looks, I just think there's something about 2D animation that's kind of got that raw human touch to it, that kind of rough quality. And what I
Sure.
like
I
about
could see
this
that.
movie
Yeah.
is actually that you can actually see a lot of the lines. They don't really try to smooth it over too
Hmm.
much. It's kind of rough in a way that it doesn't distract
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
throughout the entire film. But
Hmm.
it gives it this kind of tangible quality that I
Yeah.
really
Okay.
enjoy. And so, it's just a kind of really simple story, but very, very elegant, very emotional. Really like the voice acting here. Sean Bean
Ah.
plays the father of the young girl in the movie, and
Does he die in the movie?
I don't want to spoil it, but it's not your
Okay.
typical Sean Bean story. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
It's just really well done though, on
I
every
just bring that
level.
up because of the whole thing about how he always dies in every
Exactly.
movie.
He does
Yeah.
he does typically bite the dust by the end of the
Right.
film. But it's just really fun.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's got some darkness to it, but it's suitable for younger audiences. It's really
Hmm.
well done. It features excellent music. I mean, the music is magnificent here. They got Bruno Calais, is an Irish singer, a folk group from Ireland called Keela, and a Norwegian singer named Aurora to do all the music in this movie. It
Hmm.
is phenomenal. I mean, I could listen to the
Okay.
soundtrack all day. It's really, really
Really.
well done.
Okay.
And I had not seen this movie until this week. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got Apple TV
Wow.
Plus. They gave us like a month for free.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one that I've like, oh, I need to check that one out. So this week I finally sat down and watched it and was just blown away. I was just totally wrapped
Yeah.
up in the story. Again, the animation is just beautiful on every
Hmm.
level. Really, really enjoyed this. So it instantly ran up to my top 10. Had to include it here. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Check out all their movies. The other ones I mentioned, Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea, really well done animation.
I had not heard of it, and I think part of the problem we have these days is, if that had been come out in the theaters, there'd be advertising all over the place,
Sure.
and maybe they did that. I don't know, but
I don't think they did.
um, I think we're missing some of these films that fall through the cracks if we don't have a certain select streaming service.
Exactly. Yeah, that is something that's unfortunate about some of these. I think some of these smaller studios like Cartoon Saloon, they're kind of just looking to get their movie made. And
Yeah,
so they're like, whoever wants to pick it up, we just want to make this movie.
sure.
Apple TV said, hey, we'll take it. And so
Yeah.
that's the only place you can watch it now, unfortunately. But I'm glad they did at least release a Blu-ray,
Hmm.
which a lot of the streaming
Thank
services don't
goodness.
do.
Yeah.
So you can actually get the entire trilogy in a box set, which is well worth it. I think
Hmm.
it's actually on sale right now on Amazon. So yeah, however you can watch this movie. I think again we got Apple TV Plus for free through some kind of deal. I think with Target or something. I don't know if it's still going or
Yeah.
not, but usually you can find some kind of deal where you can get a month free and check out some of
Gotcha.
their movies. So yeah. So anyways, Wolfwalkers. That's my number six. What is your number six?
My number six is Avatar.
Oh,
Not The
interesting.
Last
Okay.
Airbender, but
Right,
Avatar.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Okay,
little known
cool.
film from, what was it, 2009?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, James Cameron really led us inside of his brain inside, for this film. And obviously, is it like number two all time box
It
office?
is.
So
I
I
think
won't
it
get
might have
into.
jumped back up to number one because they re-released it.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw this in the theater. What's interesting is it came out in IMAX 3D, and that's how I saw it.
Yeah.
And prior to that, there really was not a lot of IMAX content that
Right.
was, especially 3D.
Yeah.
It's 3D IMAX. Like there wasn't a lot of like there were a lot of documentaries you could watch in
Yeah.
3D IMAX.
Sure.
And I remember thinking, oh, this is gonna be an actual movie that I want to see. I mean, the
Yeah.
documentaries are good, don't get me wrong. And
Sure.
I went to
Sure.
a few of those,
Yeah.
but an actual James Cameron
Yeah.
movie. So we're going to see real people, and
Right.
then it's sort of this combination of real people, and then some really cool looking animation. And
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I've actually never gone back and watched the behind the scenes stuff. I need to.
Yeah, the the
Um,
the performance capture technology they used was totally groundbreaking. I mean,
mm,
of course, it's building off of what they did with Lord of the Rings and Gollum, but
yeah,
it kind of took it to the next level.
sure, sure, yeah, and I think it's just it feels kind of like an epic film at
Mhm.
certain times. And I will say the story is a bit preachy, but overall, I just think it's just a great film, especially if you can get it in that experience of which I have it on 3D, but obviously I don't have IMAX at home.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just a very enjoyable film from start to finish. It definitely takes me away to another place,
Yeah.
and feels very futuristic even when it's the humans.
Right.
Great actors in it,
Mm.
and one of the best directors ever.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's excellent. It really is one of a kind experience, which
Hmm.
is why it
So far,
became. Yeah, right. Yeah, until the sequel later this year.
well, we'll see.
Right.
I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But it is a really good one, one that I've visited a number of times, and yeah, it's definitely a fantastical place that he created.
Yeah.
It is so detailed,
Hmm.
and the language he created for the
Yeah.
Na'vi and
Hmm.
everything. It's just really, really kind of mind blowing when you think about it. All right, now we're entering the top five. So I'm going to kick us off with my number five favorite fantasy film, which is Big Fish. This is Tim Burton, my opinion, Tim Burton's best movie he's ever made. I think this is incredible filmmaking on every level. I did not know that Spielberg was set to direct this.
Oh.
And he ended up dropping out to work on Catch Me If You Can,
Oh,
which is another excellent movie. So I can't
that's a good
fault him
movie.
for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tim Burton ended up stepping in. I think this really fits Burton's sensibilities a lot more. The story that he's telling here was released December 10th, 2003. It's 2 hours, 5 minutes long. Budget of 70 million, grossed 123 million. So not a huge hit again,
Hmm.
but again, I think it's his best movie. not just on a storytelling level, but on a technical level. I think it's really well done. It's sort of a Southern Gothic fairy tale in a way. It's really about a father and son. This relationship they have where the son has to kind of discover what is true and what is not true about his father's life. His father kind of is known for telling all these tall tales about
Yeah.
his life. And you have Billy Crudup playing the son, and then Albert Finney is playing the older father. Ewan McGregor plays the younger version of Albert
Yeah.
Finney's character, the father. And I think just the performances are incredible. I really think Ewan McGregor, I don't know if he's ever been better than he is here. Totally believable as this character. Billy Crudup is an actor I like a lot that I think does a great job here as well. You've got Alison Lohman and Jessica Lange playing the same character. That kind of transition between those two characters is kind of seamless. Helena Bonham Carter, frequent collaborator with Tim Burton, is excellent here as well. Marion Cotillard, I think, is a great actress here who does
Yeah, I
a good
like her.
job. Steve Buscemi shows up. Danny DeVito shows up too. So you've got a lot of the kind of staples of Burton's kind of cast that he works with a number of times. All shot on location in Alabama. Really well shot. The cinematography is fantastic. The effects work, I think, is pretty much seamless throughout the movie. The makeup effects are also very well done. And Danny Elfman's score, I of course had to mention. We talked about him on the podcast about film scores, and this is some of his best work. He was nominated for an Oscar
Mm.
for this movie. It's a very moving, touching score, and a little bit different from what he usually does. All in all, I don't have a ton to say about it. I've actually only seen the movie twice. I recently got it on 4K and rewatched it, but it's just superb storytelling, top to bottom. Doesn't feel long. It moves by pretty quickly and just tells a very emotionally resonant story that I think pretty much anyone can relate to. Kind of a reconciliation story between this father and son. And so the fantasy elements are weaved well into this kind of very grounded story. Yeah, had to include it. It's my number five.
Yeah, I did watch Big Fish, it's called, right? Big
Yep, Big
Fish.
Fish.
Yeah.
Yep.
When it came out, so 19 years ago,
Okay.
I didn't like it.
Okay. Okay.
But keep in mind, I feel like you like Tim Burton a lot, which a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I can count on two fingers the Tim Burton movies I like:
Right.
Batman and Edward Scissorhands. And
Okay.
even those, I have little issues with them.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of the way I don't. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I haven't
Sure.
seen it in
Sure.
so long. I barely remember it.
Yeah.
But I probably should rewatch it. So I'm not going to officially go in the camp of like
Okay.
I really disliked this movie. I
Okay.
just remember that specifically not liking it,
Okay.
and I couldn't really tell you why. So I won't lambaste it or anything. But
Okay. Sure.
I'm just in general, I just hardly ever see a Tim Burton movie that I give thumbs up to.
Yeah, he's got a couple that I really dislike. So he's a little
Oh,
more
really?
hit or miss for me.
Hmm.
Probably more hits than misses for me, but yeah,
What are the two you
sometimes
dislike?
I really disliked his Willy Wonka movie. The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory I thought was terrible.
Johnny
I
Depp, yeah.
also really dislike Mars Attacks. I think that's a really
Yeah,
bad movie.
yeah, sure.
So those are the two that have come to mind that I really dislike.
Gotcha.
Pretty much everything else he's done: Beetlejuice, Batman,
Oh,
Batman
Beetlejuice is
Returns.
good. Yeah, Beetlejuice
Yeah,
is good. I didn't
yeah,
like Batman Returns. I didn't like that one.
right, right, yeah. So yeah, there's a couple I don't like, but overall, I think he has definitely a very distinct style.
Yeah,
Um,
it's stylish choices, stylistic
right,
choices, I think is where I don't really gravitate toward for whatever reason.
right, and I think here though in Big Fish he tones that down
Oh,
significantly. So
hmm,
that's why I think this one's maybe a little more accessible for a wider audience. So yeah, you should give it another shot.
I should.
All right, what is your number five?
My number five is Ever After,
Oh, I
which
haven't seen this.
oh, you have not seen it.
No.
It's so it's Drew Barrymore basically playing as I guess if Cinderella was a real life story and updated a little bit.
Okay.
Angelica Houston plays the I mean she's not called the wicked stepmother, but she
Right.
plays the stepmother.
Yeah,
And
she's good.
and Drew Barrymore's character is not named Cinderella either. So
Okay.
it's just clearly a Cinderella story. Dougray Scott plays the prince,
Okay.
and it's a very dirty kind of it feels kind of medieval. So when I
Okay.
say updated, I don't mean like modern times.
Okay.
But I just mean that it's, well, I guess now it's been over 20 years since it came out.
Right.
But it's just a really well made production, and the music by George Fenton is a very good score.
Okay.
And it's just one that I've watched numerous times. It's one that the family can watch together too, which is always
Right.
gives an extra point or two for me.
Yeah.
And I won't say a lot about it, just I thoroughly enjoy it, and I I haven't really seen any other. There's been a lot of different tellings of Cinderella, and
Yes.
I can't say I'm a fan of all of them, but
Right.
this one is very real. So it's
Okay.
kind of dark,
Right.
and just dark and gritty.
Okay.
But I think Drew Barrymore does a great job in it
Great.
as the lead, and if you can watch it, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely check that one out. I'm not sure if my wife has seen that or not. I can't remember if she's mentioned that one,
It
but
is kind of okay. It's kind of a chick flick.
right, right. Yeah, it
So
sounds kind of like it. That's why I was wondering why I haven't seen it
but
yet.
it's just, yeah, it's very good.
Okay.
I tend to watch a lot of, I mean, I watch films in the romance genre. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to admit it.
Wow, me
And
neither.
this is probably as much a romance film as it is fantasy.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. If it's based on the Cinderella story, that's kind of that fits. So yeah, yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
curious to check that one out. I like Drew Barrymore, and so yeah, I'll have to see if I can find that one. Cool, great. That's a great number five. All right, moving on to my number four, The Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring.
Ah,
This had to be in my top five. I think my wife would probably kill me if it wasn't. She'll be disappointed it's not higher, but that's okay. Look, if it was the trilogy, it would be number one, right? I
yeah.
mean, as a trilogy, it's just one of the best ever.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
looking at
Yeah.
them as individual films, it's not quite
Okay.
as high because it's not
Fair
a
enough.
complete story for me. It's a great story on its own, but
Hmm.
it's definitely the first part of a three-part
Sure.
story. Of course, the great Peter Jackson directed this. He kind of has a background in horror, which I find it interesting that so many directors start in that genre and they end up branching out, and but you can still see hints of it, throughout.
Lots of it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially here with the orcs. I mean, it's really gets
Sure.
intense. So uh,
Yeah.
he just did a phenomenal job directing this. I mean, it's a lot of people deemed it unfilmable. I mean, I mentioned, when
Oh
I talked
wow.
about Excalibur, they were trying to make this back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So this has been many years in the making. Tolkien wrote the books back in the 1950s. Runtime of 2 hours and 58 minutes. It had a budget of 92 million, ended up grossing $880 million. It was a huge hit. I vividly remember, I was very young. I was like 9 when it came out, but I remember my parents going to see it and coming back. I was dropped off at my grandparents' house. They came back and they're like, Cameron, you are going to love this movie, and they couldn't wait to show it to me. And so I watched it as soon as it came out on DVD. I got to see it, and I've just been a fan ever since. And so really like this movie. It's huge. The accolades that were heaped upon it. 13 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. It won Best Cinematography, Best Makeup, Best Score, and Best Special Effects. So just really well done on every level. The
Yeah.
DP, the director of photography, Andrew Lesney, he collaborated with Peter Jackson again on King Kong. He did movies like I Am Legend. He
Oh.
did one we just mentioned, The Last Airbender.
Ah.
He also did The Rise of the Planet of the Apes,
Okay.
and excellent cinematographer. I mean, really, really has an eye for visual storytelling and how to frame things, and
Hmm.
these big sweeping shots. And he ended up passing away back in 2015. So I wanted to be sure that we mentioned him on here. The editor, John Gilbert, does a great job. I mean, this is a 3 hour movie. It's a
Yeah.
long movie, but it doesn't feel like it. I mean, every time I
Yeah.
watch this, it just breezes by.
Editing's
Um,
so key in this movie.
it really is. It really is. I've seen the extended cuts, and I know a lot
Yeah, I
of
have
people
those.
prefer those.
Uh-huh. I
I
do too.
personally don't prefer them. I
Really?
think they're too long. I think adding an hour to each of these movies is just a little too much. As much as I love spending time in this world with these characters, I
Yeah.
think the 3 hour runtime, the theatrical versions, are the
Gotcha.
best versions.
Yeah.
Of course, we have Howard Shore, again, another guy we mentioned on a recent podcast, doing just phenomenal work with the score. It's just one of these timeless stories. I think that's why people come back to it and are so invested in this world and these characters, is because they're so well written,
Hmm.
they're so relatable and endearing. The casting here is key, obviously. All these characters are so well cast. I'll run through the cast briefly. Elijah Wood, Sean Astin, Dominic Monaghan, Billy Boyd, they're playing the four main hobbits. All great. They have such a great dynamic. Ian Holm as
Hmm.
Bilbo, Ian McKellen as Gandalf, just perfect casting all around. So iconic.
It
Viggo
helps that he's
Mortensen.
8 feet tall too.
It does, right? Exactly. Viggo Mortensen, Orlando Bloom, John Rhys Davies. You got Liv Tyler, Hugo Weaving, Kate Blanchett, Christopher Lee, and Andy Serkis. So it's just a huge ensemble cast. Many of these actors weren't very well known. This was kind of their, first big movie, and it shot most of them to superstardom. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
incredible.
And
Um,
Viggo Mortensen,
yeah,
he was a last minute addition,
that's right.
and I can't remember who he
It
replaced,
was
but he just
Stuart
like
Townsend.
Stuart Townsend. Okay, I don't
Yeah, who I
remember
don't
who that
know. I
is.
don't know if he's done anything big since.
Can you imagine it not be like not even being like because I knew who Viggo Mortensen was from actually from Daylight is where I first saw him.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, can you imagine just on a production like that dropping
Yeah,
in? I think it was the week they started shooting,
yeah,
and they're like, okay, let's get this guy and fly him in, and then
right.
yeah, tremendous.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, that's the thing. I can't imagine any other actors in these roles.
Yeah,
I don't see them ever remaking this movie for that reason, just because I don't know how you can do it
yeah,
again. The real locations obviously are a huge element of this film. New Zealand
yeah,
is a
yeah,
character. It is Middle
yeah,
Earth. So many people take vacations there just to see where they shot this
yeah.
movie.
The Middle Earth
Uh,
experience.
that's right. That's right. They've got Hobbiton is built out there. You can go and visit it. So it's
Yeah.
pretty incredible what kind of this movie did, just kind of in pop culture.
Hmm.
So yeah, production design, costumes, the props. I mean, every element. Of course, the effects are groundbreaking. We've kind of never
Yeah,
seen something like that on that scale before in movies.
yeah,
So
right.
it's just so well done. The blend, again, the blend I talk a lot about when I talk about effects is practical and CGI
Uh-huh.
coming together to make something feel real and grounded.
Yeah,
Feel like you can reach out and touch it.
right.
That's an element of this movie that I think is very important and very well done. So
Yeah.
yeah, this one had to be on the list. So that's my number four.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Uh can you can you imagine though? There's a lot of movies where a director might, be handed something that he might want to direct and they might go, "Oh yeah, okay, I could, get my arms around this material." Can you imagine though all of that material just dropped on you and like, "Okay, go. Make that make a movie." And in fact, two or three. I think it went between two and three at various times.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and put that together. Where would you start?
Right. I
Thank goodness
know.
it's not me. I'd be
I
like,
know.
I give up.
Yeah.
I give up.
What an undertaking. Yes.
Yeah.
So many people involved that he had to rely on. But yeah, he had to architect all of it. It's
Yeah. It not only
amazing.
is it coherent, but it's brilliant,
Right.
So I mean,
Yeah.
wow.
Absolutely.
Right.
Incredible. Incredible work. That was my number four. What do you got, Bert?
I've got Dragonheart, 1995, I think it is.
Cool one.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid, David Thewlis, Pete Postlewaite that we talked about from
Yes.
Jurassic
That's right.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
and Sean Connery as the voice of
Yeah.
the
Draco.
dragon.
Yep.
Yeah, and this I remember when this came out again, very early. I mean, in the CGI era, 2 years after Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
and this was the movie that sort of raised everything to the next level with as far as number of effect shots. I remember they were bragging
Right.
about and that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
really it does hold up well if you go back and look at the dragon in these films. Now some of the close-ups are obviously puppetry and which makes perfect sense.
Right.
I didn't go back to look to see if anybody involved in this production was part of Jurassic Park or not, but
Right.
they nail it too.
Yeah.
And so there's great. They bring this dragon to life, as does Sean Connery. He's the voice work is terrific in it.
Yeah.
And Dennis Quaid is hilarious. And great as the action hero. David Thewlis makes a really good bad guy in this. You know what I mean? And but what really gets me in this movie, it maybe as much as any film on this list, I won't say more, is the story. It's just one of those that really pulls you in. I mean, it could verge on sappy perhaps, but I don't think so. And then the music by Randy Edelman is tremendous. One of my favorite scores of all time. There's great sets. You got these little villages they built, and there's a lot of humor throughout. It's just a great adventure fantasy movie.
Yeah, I agree. That's not one I visited a number of times. I remember watching when I was younger, and just having so much fun watching this knight and this dragon team up and go on all these adventures. Yeah, it's really fun, and it does have a good amount of humor in it, which I think is good. It's not like your super serious, fantasy movie.
Yeah,
It definitely has dramatic elements to it for sure, but it does get quite emotional too at the end.
Yes.
So yeah, they pull it off. Yeah, they really pull it off really well. I wonder if how much this was the template for How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, I have not seen those.
Oh, really? Those are good. You would probably enjoy them. They're more family friendly, but
yeah. Is it similar type of?
Yeah, it's a boy and his dragon. It's the dragon doesn't talk, but it's kind of one of those sort of stories. Has similarities to this.
Yeah, and I have not seen there's at least one Dragonheart sequel, maybe more. I don't know. I have not watched those.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Several.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you like Dragonheart quite a bit then, huh? Do you?
I do. Yeah, I think it's really good. I'd probably give it at least 3.5, 4 stars. I think it's a solid movie. It's been a little while since I've watched it. I need to rewatch it, but yeah, I remember thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, jumping into our top three now. My number three is The Green Knight. This movie just came out last year.
Yeah, it's on my watch list. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Can't wait for you to see it. It is directed by a guy named David Lowery. He's a young filmmaker. First movie I saw him do was the remake of Pete's Dragon in 2016 for Disney. He did a phenomenal job with that. And so I was really excited to see what he would do next. The Green Knight, it's got a great cast. Dev Patel is an actor I really like. It's got Alicia Vikander.
I know who that is. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a British actor. And it's got Alicia Vikander. Joel Edgerton is in it. Sean Harris. A guy named Ralph Ineson. Really good cast. A lot of them aren't very well known, but just really, really good actors in this movie.
Is Dev Patel in Last Airbender?
He is. He's Zuko. Yep, Prince Zuko.
Ah, that's where I know him from.
That's him. It always comes back to Last Airbender. Everything we talk about on this
everything boils down to that movie.
We're going to call this podcast the Last Airbender podcast eventually.
Have to hit every reference.
That's right. So yeah, this is just a really, really interesting movie. A lot of depth here, a lot of layers. It's very, cerebral, kind of the imagery says a lot. It's not heavy on dialogue, but it's just really, really fascinating to watch and visually just stunning. I mean, some of these shots are just really beautiful, like paintings I want to put on my wall.
Wow.
Yeah, really well done on every level. The cinematography is huge. I mean, it stands out for me as being one of the most well shot films probably I've ever seen. Honestly,
wow,
it's excellent. He cites Willow, he cites Excalibur as inspirations, but this is really it's different from those. It's definitely got the kind of darkness of Excalibur, and maybe kind of the world building of Willow. Maybe it's based on a poem called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's kind of this almost surrealist dark fantasy film. It's really, like I said, subversive in many ways. It's got this kind of dreamlike quality to it. It's just a really interesting story. It does have kind of a very straightforward narrative in a way, but like I said, also has all these layers going on and these scenes where you go, what does that mean? What did I just watch? There are kind of these moments throughout the movie where you're kind of scratching your head, going, I don't know what this is, but I like it. That kind
Oh,
of thing.
yeah, yeah.
So for those who don't know, Sir Gawain is the nephew of King Arthur. So this is
Oh,
kind of
okay.
in that
I didn't know that.
Arthurian legend, but it's years later. It's King
Mhm.
Arthur's been on the throne for years. It's about his nephew kind of trying to live up to the legend of his uncle, trying to kind of
Oh,
earn his place at the round table. He's a
oh, okay.
very, very
Huh.
young knight. He's not actually even a knight yet. And so,
Okay.
he's kind of lost at the beginning of the story, wasting his days away. The inciting incident that happens kind of about 10, 15 minutes into the movie sends him on this quest. And it's just a fascinating journey, very different type of movie. Really interesting themes, like I mentioned, a lot of depth to the story. It's all kind of about honor, courage. The tagline for the film is "When honor was everything, when courage made kings." And so it's kind of all about that. That kind of sums it up in a way. I won't talk too much more about it because I don't want to give away anything. But like I said,
Yeah,
just
thanks.
a unique experience.
Okay.
One that very, very much sticks in my mind. I think about this movie all the time, and I've only seen it,
Wow.
I think, two or three times. It's from an independent studio called A24. They take a lot of risks on their films. They make a lot of very strange movies.
Yeah.
Um, Very small budget, $15 million.
Oh, wow.
Only grossed 19 because it got a very limited release. And so it's kind of one of those that's kind of gained popularity over time this past year that it's been released. Got a lot of awards acclaim at all kinds of different film festivals and things like that.
Oh,
So yeah, a lot to. You could talk about this movie for hours. It's one of those that it just has so much going on, but really, really well done. The main character I will mention, not Gawain, but the Green Knight himself, who actually you don't see a ton in the movie, but
mm.
it's incredible prosthetics. What they
Oh,
did with
okay.
the actor who plays him,
Huh.
some of the most incredible I've ever seen. Very, very believable character that they designed there. So yeah, as soon as you can, you got to check out the Green Knight. It's not everyone's cup of tea. My wife is not a fan.
Okay.
Every time I
Okay.
put this one on, she walks out of the room. It's not her thing, but
Okay.
it's one that I thoroughly enjoy for what they're exploring here is just so interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna move that to a lot higher up on my watch list then. Yeah.
On to your number three.
What I've got is Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Cool. Great. I'm glad one of these made the list.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have seen this movie. I don't need to get a lot into it.
Sure.
Johnny Depp, we found out after this recent trial that he's basically playing himself here, right? In this movie.
Right.
Orlando Bloom is great. Keira Knightley's great. Jeffrey Rush
Mm,
is good. Obviously it's an exciting adventure story. I think it's the best pirate movie I've seen. When I sit and think about it, I can't really think of a better one. It's based on the ride, obviously from Disney. When the trailer came out, I thought this is going to be terrible. Kind of in a similar way that when the Transformers trailer came out, I thought, well, that looks really good, but it can't. I mean, it's not going to be good. It's based
yeah.
on, you know,
Just on a game or a
yeah,
toy or whatever.
toy or something, and it blew me away. Now,
Yeah.
here's the other weird thing. I saw this in the theater, and I fell asleep during the movie, and that's never happened to me. And so after I didn't revisit it for quite a while, and then people started talking about how good it was, so I rented
Yeah.
it, and then I thought it was terrific, and it
Yeah.
occurred to me, well, I did go to a midnight showing of
Oh.
that movie. And I worked all day, and then I was actually out of town on a business trip, so I thought, oh, I'm totally going to go see a movie tonight by myself, and I fell asleep. But it was not because of the movie, because it's
Right.
uh it's a very good movie. The humor, I think, is just so good, so
Yeah.
right on, and
Yeah.
Orlando Bloom is great in it, and some of the duels between him and Depp and just other
Mm,
people,
yeah.
amazing sets, costumes, story's pretty good,
Yeah.
so just it's one of those that every chance I can, I like to put this one on. I haven't seen it recently. I want to watch it again. But probably the best pirate movie I can see or I've seen. I've watched a couple of the sequels, didn't like them as much. I
Okay.
gave up at some point. I
Yeah.
don't know how many they've made, but I at
Yeah.
some point I kind of gave up on them.
Yeah. They've made five so far. I think the first three are all excellent. I actually prefer the second one. We talked about it on our
Hmm.
recent sequels
Yeah, I thought there
podcast.
was a different one that you preferred. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the second and third. I mean, they kind of go off the rails a little. I think that's why some people don't like them. They kind of go too crazy. I don't mind that. I don't
Okay.
mind when things kind of escalate
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way that's kind of bizarre. I like seeing things that I've never seen before in a movie, and the
Sure.
sequels did that
Yeah.
for me. So,
Okay.
but yeah, this first one, it's an all-time classic. I mean, it's just like you said, best pirate movie. It's kind of just a quintessential adventure film
Hmm.
that I've enjoyed many times as well. It is so so well done. The casting,
Hmm.
the action, it's really really cool.
Yeah, and where Depp took this,
Yeah,
it could have been just a straightforward person,
right.
playing Jack Sparrow, and so
Yes,
they let him sort of make it nuanced according to whatever he wanted to do, I guess.
right.
And so I don't know that it would have been as good if someone else played it, or because it's really his. He's basically just a walking punchline
Yeah,
because of the way that he responds to
right.
everything in the movie,
Right.
uh,
Well, just the way
riffing
he
and all that.
looks, the way he moves. I mean,
Yeah,
everything. He based it
yeah,
on Keith Richards,
right, right.
who
But
ends up playing his father in the sequels, which is pretty
sure,
funny.
yeah.
But
Yeah, he's kind of an anti-hero.
right,
At the same time,
definitely.
kind of runs away sometimes from
Yep,
things. And
definitely.
it's great. Yeah.
Such an interesting character. Yeah, one of the best movie characters I think ever, just because of how memorable and how iconic and specific that character is, and again, how he looks, how he moves, how he talks.
Yeah.
It's an excellent, excellent performance, one of a
Yeah.
kind. Disney did not like what they were seeing from the dailies. They were
Really?
like, "What is this guy doing? He's acting drunk. This is a family movie. We're Disney. We can't do this." And the director was like, "Hey, this is a choice. I agree with him. I think this is how we should go with it." And they were like, "Okay, I guess we'll see how it turns out." And of course, it turned out great and became one of their
Isn't
biggest
it?
franchises.
Yeah. Yeah. Gore Verbinski. He's directed some other good movies too.
He has, he has. He did Rango, which I like,
Hmm.
and a couple others. Yeah, he's good. Awesome. Okay, we're on to our number twos. So my number two, it is The Chronicles of Narnia. I remember seeing this when it came out
Hmm.
back in 2005. It was released right around Christmas time. Just superb filmmaking. I really
Hmm.
like getting lost in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did end up after seeing it read the first book, or I guess it's the second book, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that C.S. Lewis wrote. He's a great writer. He's a great inventive creator, just like his friend Tolkien,
Yeah.
who was kind of even more into the depths of Tolkien created a whole language and did all this crazy
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. And Lewis, geared his more towards children, which I think
Sure.
was a very conscious decision. The story, of course, anyone who knows anything about the Bible will know it's a very clear Christian allegory that he's dealing
Right.
with here, which I think is just so well done. Director of photography, Donald McAlpine. He's done a lot of movies, a lot of very different types of movies. He did everything from the original Predator film to Moulin Rouge. So
Oh,
he's kind
oh,
of run the gamut on all kinds of different
those are
movies.
opposites,
Yeah,
opposite ends of the spectrum. Yeah.
exactly. So it just has a great visual style. It has an
Mhm.
excellent score. Harry Gregson Williams
Yeah. The
did
score's
for it.
really good. Yep.
It is. It is. It's so memorable. Great
Hmm.
themes in there, and he actually collaborated with this director named Andrew Adamson, on Shrek. That's where they met,
Okay.
and they
Hmm.
first collaborated, and then ended up
The
working
music
on
on
this
Shrek
one.
is good too. The
It
score.
is. It
Yeah.
is. Yep. So yeah, this one had a budget of 180 million, gross 745 million. As we mentioned, they have
Wow.
two sequels to
Yeah.
this one. It has a runtime of 2 hours 23 minutes, and the cast is phenomenal.
Hmm.
Of course, Liam Neeson as Aslan, the voice of the
Yeah.
lion, is so regal and just powerful. Perfect casting there. Tilda Swinton as the White Witch is excellent. I mean, I
She
think
has
she's one
hair.
of right. Yeah, right.
Hmm.
Not like Doctor
Yep.
Strange. Yeah, she has hair, and yeah, she just has a great look about her.
Hmm.
The way
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
carries herself. I mean, everything about that performance is really, really well done.
Right.
James McAvoy in an early role for him as Mr.
Oh.
Tumnus. plays the
Oh,
fawn.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, you wouldn't really know
forgot
it.
that.
He's kind of
Yeah.
under some makeup here, and
Right, right.
but he has some really good, a couple of really emotional scenes that he does really well with. Ray Winstone and Dawn
Mhm.
French voice Mr. and Mrs. Beaver. They do a great job playing some kind of fun characters that kind of guide our heroes on their journey. Michael Madsen also voices a wolf in this movie. I think he does a really good job. It's kind of menacing. Voice talent, overall cast is excellent. Of course, the kids who play these main characters, the Pevensey children, William Moseley, Anna Popplewell, Skander Keynes, and Georgie Henley all do such a good job. Child actors are, I feel like it's hit or miss. It's so difficult to get great performances out of them. But when you have a director that can really, communicate with them well, I think that's something Spielberg does better than anybody. Obviously, Mr. Adamson did it here as well because these kids do a really good job in every
Yeah.
scene, and really take you on the journey with them, make you root for them, and every moment feels earned and believable. What's cool about this movie is it has this opening sequence in World War II, and that
Yeah,
really
that's right.
is what grounds the movie. Open with that, and it's something that everyone can kind of remember and relate to, and it just sets it on an interesting path moving forward as these kids kind of escape London, and go and live with their uncle, played by Jim Broadbent, who also does a good job in this as kind of their mysterious uncle. He's kind of a quirky character, and then they escape into this fantastical world through this
Hmm.
wardrobe, and it's one of these movies that captures that childlike wonder that I
Hmm.
think few other movies do, and it's just so
Yeah.
well done. An interesting thing I learned from the behind the scenes is that the young actress who plays Lucy, they actually blindfolded her before the scene where she actually enters Narnia, and you have the
Uh-huh.
lamppost and the snow
Yeah.
all around her. They actually
Yeah.
blindfolded her, brought her onto the set, and then took the blindfold off so they could get a genuine reaction out of her, which I thought was really
Mm.
smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like it when they do things like that. I think that,
Yeah.
again, it just makes it more real. Overall, it's just fantastic. The final battle in this movie is epic, and it is intense. And the movie's PG, but they managed to do it without gore.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no blood, nothing like that, but it is still a very intense sequence. Spoiler alert: Death of Aslan is a very intense sequence as well, very dark and scary, but it's not overdone.
Hmm.
It's to kind of just toe the line there in a really really great way that I think gets the point across.
Hmm.
But it's really well done. Nominated for many Oscars, including sound mixing and visual effects. The visual effects in this are very good, and it won for best makeup. So
Hmm.
it did get some accolades when it was released. So one I've watched a number of times. I like the whole trilogy. This one stands out as being the best of the bunch, and one I've visited a number of times. So that's my number two.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it, but Tolkien and Lewis were like
They
buddies
were.
back around the time of World War II,
That's
right? I
right.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
and
Tolkien fought in World War One, and
oh
so
wow.
yeah, he actually witnessed all of World War Two as well.
When this movie came out, well, when Fellowship of the Ring came out, there was a lot of discussion about which film was better between. I'm going to shift gears a little bit
Sure.
just for a moment
Yeah.
between the first Harry Potter film
Oh,
and and Fellowship of the Ring. I'm not really sure why. I watched both films, and I always felt like Fellowship of the Ring was much superior
mm,
to the
Harry
first.
Potter.
Thank you, first Harry
Yeah.
Potter film,
Yeah.
but there were similar comparisons with this film when it came
Mm,
out to
right.
Lord of the Rings, and I'm afraid it gets a little bit of the short end of the stick because it is kind of like a light version. It's not really the same thing, but it's kind of a
Right.
light version of that type of film, right?
Sure.
And I do find it interesting that you actually like this better than the Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
first film.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Sure.
they're both really good films. But that is interesting. But that went through my mind too a little bit the first time I saw it, which was like, yeah, this is a really good film. I prefer, Fellowship of the Ring or
Sure.
something like that. But I
Right.
mean, it's just as a comparison, though. I remember a lot of people talking about those all three of those films in that
Right.
context at the time they came out.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. They're all in the same genre. They're all kind of telling these big epic stories, that have a lot of
Based on books. Yeah.
based on books. They all have a lot of allegory and metaphor for the Bible and for all kinds of different things. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
all totally makes sense. I think Narnia reason it's maybe a little higher for me is because first of all, I just think it's like I said, a more complete story. If we're looking
Hmm.
at the trilogy of Lord of the Rings versus the trilogy of Narnia, I probably lean Lord of the Rings.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so that's one reason I feel like I can just watch this movie and I have a complete experience. The
Hmm.
imagery has a lot to do with it for me as well,
Sure.
and the themes they're playing with. But both are excellent. They're pretty close. All my top five are pretty close.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, this one I think is one that I do actually prefer.
Yeah. Sure. Good pick though.
All right, what is your number two?
It is Zack Snyder's 300.
Oh, awesome. Great pick. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Gerard Butler, and basically what put him on the map is a A-lister.
Yeah.
Lena Headey,
Yep.
Michael Fassbender is actually in this, and I
That's
forgot
right.
that.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's a great action film. Some
Mhm.
of the best visuals you will find on film, and
Agreed.
I believe all of the backgrounds in this movie were digital. In other
That's
words, I
correct.
don't think they filmed anything on location. It was
Yep.
all CG backgrounds, and man, did they look cool.
Yeah.
And I gotta say right off the bat, I probably said this before. I love slow mo when it's used
Me
well.
too. Me too.
Some people criticize slow mo.
Yeah.
I think we have talked about this before. Michael Bay gets criticized for using slow mo.
Sure. Sure.
Those people are buzzkills because this movie uses slow mo better than probably anything I can think of, especially in those battle scenes.
Yep.
And it is digital, and you can tell,
Mhm.
but it still looks amazing to me.
Yeah.
And so I just it's a good story executed very very well and very satisfyingly.
Right.
It's got now, and I'm a fan of the Michigan State Spartans, so the fact that they're talking
Okay.
about Spartans, it's not the same thing. They're not talking about that kind of Spartan, but I still like that. So it's
Right.
got that going for it. And by the way, there's this game that came out, God of War. Do you know about that
Heard of
game?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the main moves that the main guy does in the game is called a Spartan kick, and
Okay.
it's just like Gerard Butler in the movie. He basically
Right.
just steps back and front kicks these people, and they go
Right.
flying back. I haven't played the game, but I
Okay.
understand it's a lot of fun,
That's cool.
and it's got to be based on this.
Definitely.
And a really good score here by Tyler Bates.
Yeah.
Just an all around, just beautiful, gorgeous universe that was created by Zack Snyder,
Right.
one of my favorite directors too.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a 5-star film, great film.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's really good. It's really another one that's dark, intense.
It
It's
is,
hard
yeah,
R.
pretty
It's
bloody,
definitely
pretty bloody,
yeah,
yeah,
very very bloody, very yeah, very
almost in
intense.
an
But
artistic way sometimes with the blood.
that's true. That's the thing about the movie is that it's almost I mean, this is actually based on the comic. So
Oh, that's right,
um,
I forgot that. See, I don't even really
so
know the world of comics.
yeah, there is a Frank Miller comic book
That's right, yeah.
that depicts this story that happened in
Hmm.
the past that he based it on. That's why he wanted to go all digital is because he wanted to make it look like a comic.
Yeah,
He wanted it to look like
gotcha.
those kind of panels that get that color,
Hmm.
all that stuff. So yeah, he did a
Right.
phenomenal job with this movie. I don't think it's
Yeah.
his best film, but it's not a
Yeah,
bad
I don't know
movie.
about that either. Yeah.
It's excellent on every level.
Yeah.
It's really well done. The acting, the action, very well done. Yeah,
Can you think
super.
of better digital visuals than a movie like this?
I don't
I
know.
mean, if you
I
got
don't
to go
know.
digital and all CGI, I mean, I just it's just so beautiful to look at.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, there's not many that come to mind
Yeah.
that are this striking and stunning visually.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good pick. We are now at our number one picks, our favorite fantasy movies of all time. My number one is Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, I've seen this.
Have you? Okay,
Oh
cool.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Great, great. Yeah, this was released October 20th, 2006, just in time for Halloween. Perfect Halloween film.
Yes.
It's at the same time the most terrifying and beautiful movie I've ever seen.
Good
I
way to describe it. Yeah.
it's horrifying, but I just
Yeah.
love watching this movie. It is so beautiful to look at. It was, a movie that he had been developing for 20 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this was a story he's been wanting to tell for a long time. It was based on dreams he'd had as a kid.
Oh,
It
really?
was based
I guess I
on,
shouldn't be surprised based on his filmography,
right,
right?
exactly, based on a sketchbook he had that he'd been
Oh,
drawing in for years and years.
hmm.
So yeah, it's all from his mind, but it's kind of loosely based on these Greek myths of the god Pan, of things that he liked, like Wizard of Oz,
Hmm.
Alice in Wonderland, these kind
Hmm.
of fairy tales that he enjoyed.
Yeah.
But it's definitely his own unique spin on all that stuff,
Yeah.
as only he can do. He's just such a distinct filmmaker. I really, really enjoy his movies. Amazing visual storyteller. I actually just got to watch, before we started the podcast, the movie with the commentary on,
Oh,
and he talked a lot about how he kind of hates dialogue. He doesn't really like writing movies. He doesn't like writing dialogue. He writes all of his films pretty much. I think he's written every screenplay he's directed, but he's a
yeah, I could
visual.
see that though in his movie. Like the creepiest scene, I don't think has any dialogue.
Yeah, it's all about visuals for him. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
pure cinema in that way. He just does a great job here setting up the story, telling the story. He worked with Guillermo Navarro on the cinematography. It's just stunning. Camera work, the camera movements, the framing, the lighting is superb.
Hmm.
Just really, really great. Javier Navarrete is the composer.
Yeah,
He
some
did
good
a
music in this.
superb job with the
Yeah.
music. It is
Haunting, haunting.
haunting. It is emotional. It is excellent,
Yeah.
excellent on the
I
musical
love the main
side.
theme in this.
Definitely, definitely well
Yeah.
done. Had a budget of only 19 million. This movie was a big risk. It's all in Spanish, the entire film.
Right.
It ended up grossing 83 million, so made pretty good
Hmm.
money. It's right at 2 hours long, and it had multiple Oscar nominations for the screenplay, for the score, and for best foreign film. It won for best art direction, best cinematography, and best makeup.
Oh.
And of course, we have to talk about the makeup. The multiple characters in this are these creatures that these people created around an actor named Doug Jones. Doug
Yeah, I've watched some of
Jones,
the behind the scenes stuff on this.
yeah,
Very
it,
interesting.
it is really incredible what they did.
Yeah.
Doug Jones is a phenomenal actor. He's not, he's kind of known for doing these creatures. He's
Hmm.
kind of been pigeonholed in this creature guy. They always put him under all this makeup, but he's just a
Yeah.
great actor, really.
Yeah.
What he's doing here, the way he's playing Pan, the actual fawn character here, and the
Yeah.
Pale Man, who we see in one pivotal sequence in the film, is really stupendous. I mean, it is a great performance he's giving,
Yes.
and it's so visceral. This film, it has really intense moments. It is an R-rated fairy tale. It's a fairy tale for adults. It does not
Hmm.
pull punches when it comes to the reality of the film, which is the Spanish Civil War, which was going on back in the 40s. So it's a part of history I didn't really know anything about. It's not really
Yeah.
talked about a lot. It's not really seen on film a lot. So it was interesting to get that in here. He talked a lot in the commentary about the sound design and how the sound design is inspired actually by video games, because video games are so immersive in
Mm.
their sound design. He wanted that same kind of thing. So if you got a surround sound system, crank it up and put this one in, it is really immersive. It really puts you
Huh.
in the film,
Yeah.
more than most movies do. Production design, incredible. These sets that they built are amazing.
Yeah.
The CGI holds up pretty well, I think, for most of the scenes. They did a lot of it practically.
Hmm.
So the moments of CGI, you can kind of tell, it might be a
Mm.
CG creature or something, but it works for the scene. It's one that I've returned to a number of times. I always enjoy it. It's one that, again, it's not an easy watch necessarily. It's not one that you just
Yeah.
throw in for fun.
Yeah.
But it is one that I've enjoyed a number of times and has such great themes of, escaping your life and love and family and sacrifice, all these great themes that are explored that are really, really poignant at the end of the film. Really, the ending is quite emotional. So, one of my favorite movies, this is in my top 20 of all time.
Oh,
So, it's one that I just can't get enough of. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend Pan's Labyrinth.
yeah, and I forgot about this movie. I probably would have
Okay.
considered it if I had time to rewatch it,
Yeah.
because I really enjoyed it when I saw it.
Mhm.
That one dinner scene just was
Oh,
creepy. Like,
man.
it was hard. Like, I mean, I'm just squirming in my seat a
I
little bit. Like,
know.
oh, those are some things I remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it,
Okay.
but yeah, and great score. Yeah, that's just it's a really good pick. Yeah,
Yeah, I've got the Criterion now has it on Blu-ray. So
really.
yeah,
Oh,
highly, highly recommend picking it up.
okay.
Now we're on to your number one, Bert. What do you got?
Interestingly enough, I'm gonna sort of turn yours, segue it into mine a little bit,
Okay.
because I believe wasn't Del Toro originally slated to direct the Hobbit movies?
He was. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
He was going to direct. They were going to make two. That was when they were going to make two
Okay.
Hobbit movies because Hobbit's only one book. It's really a children's book. It's not super
Yeah.
long.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so yeah, he was going to direct two of the Hobbit movies after Peter Jackson finished his Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it ended up falling through, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. There's some kind of disagreement, and then Peter Jackson said, "Fine, I'll do it. I've
Right.
got a million hours to devote to this trilogy."
Right.
Yeah. So my number one is not from The Hobbit, but it
Okay.
is Fellowship of the Ring.
Excellent. Excellent choice.
Yeah, and you said a lot about it.
Yeah.
So I'll just point out some things that really stick out to me.
Sure.
You really can't beat those beginning scenes in the Shire.
Oh, yeah.
As much as I love the villages and Rings of Power, I
Hmm.
just love the look of the Shire village. If
Yeah.
I one of these days, it'd be like a dream trip to go see the Hobbit village in
No.
New Zealand, if I
Yeah.
still could. And
Right.
then when we first see Frodo, I've never heard anybody else comment on this. The first time you see him, he's sitting under a tree reading. I've never seen anything like it. It's a 2D film, and that shot of all the trees and everything around him and everything, it looks 3D to me. I've
Yeah.
watched that over and over and over again, and I
Yeah.
can't get how Peter Jackson made it look three-dimensional. I mean, not quite as much, as
Right.
actual 3D, but
Sure.
it's just so engaging, just that
Yeah.
moment. And not that it's a significant moment in the film. I mean, it's the
Right.
introduction of the sort of the main character, if you will, I guess. But
Right.
anyway, look out for that next time
Yeah.
if you happen to watch that again.
Right. Right.
Look for that very first shot. It's just so amazing to look at to me, and
That's cool.
that's just the beginning of how much I love this movie.
Yeah.
I actually saw this movie alone. The year it came out, I was at a family gathering, and I think we were there a couple days. I knew about Fellowship of the Ring, but I wasn't really that interested in seeing it necessarily, because
Hmm.
I thought it might be just a big disaster, because the original trailer actually told you that there were going to be three movies,
Oh.
and then they showed glimpses of all three movies, and I thought
Huh.
that, oh, that's going to be bad,
That's a bad
um
idea.
so I'm at this family gathering. I think it was right around Christmas. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to go see a movie. I'll be back in a couple hours. And I went to the theater, and that just looked like the best choice at the time.
Right.
So I sat in the theater and was really expecting it to be bad. And
Yeah.
sometimes that can have the opposite effect.
Sure.
And man, was I blown. I had no idea it was going to be this sort of just gigantic
Right.
scale of a film.
Yeah.
And
Nobody
in
did.
yeah, and in every way is done so well.
Yeah.
I have to mention Sean Bean, because
Of course.
great role. It's where the movie goes from a very innocent point
Mhm.
to a very sense of dread and a very dark point by the end of the film. And I know it's not the end of the series or end of the
Sure.
trilogy, but I just love the transition. You almost have like an origin story,
Yeah.
and you got all the things I mentioned before about the forest perspective and all that.
Mhm.
But I just love, I mean, you really feel like the hobbits bring you in, and you feel like, oh, I really identify. They're like people, like,
Right.
good people,
Yeah.
good, hardworking, salt of the earth people.
Sure.
And then you gradually get introduced to more and more, and you're like, oh no, these poor hobbits,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
just really feel like I'm in that same vehicle with them throughout the film. And
Definitely. Yeah, it has that kind of loss of innocence story where these
yeah,
hobbits,
yeah,
they've kind of just been sheltered. in this
Right.
one beautiful area they've lived their whole lives.
Yeah.
And when they
Yeah.
journey out, they're discovering how messed up the world is and how scary it
Yeah.
is. And yeah, it's
Right.
really well done.
It crescendos like throughout the entire film, all the way to the point at the basically the very end where they lose Gandalf. And
Mhm.
I know it's, you find out in the sequel what happened,
Right.
but I mean, I don't know what it is. That scene is so powerful.
Yeah.
And like you've been on this long journey with these characters that you didn't really expect. I mean, the whole universe is so engaging. And then you
Yeah.
get to this moment where you're like, oh, like the entire bottom has dropped out from under them, and it's so
Yeah.
emotional.
It is. It
And so
is.
I don't know. There's tons we could say about it. You kind of
Sure.
like the movie too.
Yeah.
Um, it's a
Big fan.
great movie. I
It
love the entire
is.
trilogy, but Two
Two Towers.
Towers
Yep.
and Return of the King, they're kind of the same. I mean, it's great stuff, but
Yeah.
the tone is kind of the same throughout. I like
Sure.
sort of the starting point of Fellowship,
Right.
where you end up at the end, even though it's not a completion of the story. So that's why
Yeah.
I think it's the best one.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, definitely 5 stars. I mean, one of
Yeah.
the best films ever made. It's probably in my top 10, 20 for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely way up there for me too. I can watch it over and over again, never get tired of it. It's a great introduction to the world. The world building, that prologue does such a great job of
Yeah. Yeah.
introducing everything in this kind of huge way. Great journey, just a great film on every level. So yeah, I'm glad you have it at number one.
One more
Um,
quick thing.
yeah.
They kind of introduced us to this thing of like the 20-minute prologue,
Right,
right?
right.
Because I think the subsequent film is the prologue, maybe, or not about a prologue, but where they bring you in the titles, the
Yes,
title of Two Towers and all that,
right.
is quite a bit into the movie.
Yeah,
And I noticed that they did that with Rings of Power as well. I
they
think it was
did.
18 minutes into the
Really?
thing where
Okay,
they say this is the Rings of Power, whatever,
okay.
they show you on the screen, same thing. And I'm like,
Interesting.
yep, that's about right.
All right, so that is our top 10 list, favorite fantasy films of all time. That was a difficult list to make. There were so many, but I think we ended up with our favorites, which is what it's all about. So be sure to let us know what your favorites are in the comments below. We want to know your top 10 favorite fantasy films. Give us your review of The Rings of Power, what you thought about that. Come back to the channel for all the videos here at The Real World. In the description below are all of our social media links. So make sure you go to those as well. Thanks again for joining us, Bert.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.